A central bank.
All right, Jared, we come to you.
What is Ripple?
Woody was a Bitcoin. Yeah. Yes.
In 350 BCE, Aristotle defined sound money as being durable, transferable, divisible, scarce, recognizable, and fungible. Sound money.
I mean, I know what cryptocurrency is.
Why don't you tell me what you know about Bitcoin as a jumping off point?
Okay, sure.
Yo, check it. Hey, yo, fuck cash currently. Cutties pay me in cryptocurrency. For the crystals that I cut with the cutlery. Anonymous, don't have to meet plugs on the corner now. Press enter on the keyboard. I send your order out 100 miles an hour as we cruise down the Silk Road. Blowing OG out the whip, trying to pull holes. I dream of empires, trying to stack guap like niggas who work on Wall Street. So I'm chasing buyers. Log in, there's plenty of users and consumers getting high and rich off of their computer. Ain't nothing new, this info wait for everybody, yo. Use it to your advantage to take over your body, yo. Magic mushrooms, I had them eating them like Mario. Blockchain heavy, got it clicking with the Molly flow. And niggas gotta know.
It was founded by a Japanese guy.
Or guys, or girls, going by the name Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008. True identity still unknown.
Talking about niggas grilling, man. We out here. Lordy. Yeah. I told my Lordy to take a look inside the dark market. Upload the Bitcoin, we going car shopping. Yeah. You wanted me to check out your music page, you not popping. Knock your ass out like Bernard Hopkins. I got a computer geek white boy, you go to John Hopkins. One Bitcoin worth $8,000. Let's get it. Found the vendor off the Tor browser, bought product and flipped it. He just needed a drop addy for where they gonna ship it. It wasn't a scam, he read the forms before he made a decision. Until he ran into his man Skrilla. Yeah. Told him we can do this shit legally, no need for paraphernalia. Just keep your word, I heard here's somebody that'll kill you. I'm on a Coinbase, looking kinda familiar, like I've been here before. I see the transaction on the blockchain, you gotta spin with your boy. Shoot me the address to the wallet, and I'ma send it tomorrow. Just make me want run up in all black on the horse like Zorro. It'll be best to control your temperature, Paco. Put a nigga ass in the footy nails, there won't be nobody there to help me. Coinbase layout super easy, there's no way I can fail you. Use the VPN so the boys have no way to trail you. The move at fast pace, I had to control the hash rate. The value of the Bitcoin decreased, it was a bad day. Misogynist acts use bitches' backs as an ashtray. Skate on bitches like Cascade. I'm out. My lordy got a Bitcoin ATM in his living room. All of the cash I had in my pocket, I wanted to give it to him. With the vision, I'm vicariously living through him. I told my bro it's a way that we can make money even though it's different for him. He got a new job contract, want me to rip it for him. Told me any ideas I had in my mind, go ahead, pitch it to him. My Duke's busting the room like, what are you niggas doing? Get money in that bag, give me the dark way. I told my lordy to take a look inside the dark market. Upload the Bitcoin, we going car shopping. Yeah, you wanted me to check out your music page, you not popping. Knock your ass out like Bernard Hopkins. I got a computer geek white boy, you go to John Hopkins. One Bitcoin worth $8,000. Let's get it. Found the vendor off the Tor browser, bought product and flipped it. He just needed a drop addy for where they gon' ship it. It wasn't a scam, he read the forms before he made a decision. Until he ran into his man Skrilla. With the raps and the Bitcoin, we can make 11 million. Get a dose of me, that's how the medicine heal you. Hear me? Give me though. Give my Bob Lordy. My Bob Lordy.
Not in generations has Wall Street absorbed the number of body blows it took today.
The world has gone mad and the system is broken.
The American financial system is rocked to its foundation
As top Wall Street institutions topple under a mountain of debt.
Bailed out by the taxpayers.
It's pretty clear they cannot be trusted.
Money protocol.
He said, your problem is that you're trying to understand this as an economic story. Once you look at it as a crime story,
You'll get it.
The Fed is losing control once again. In just a couple of days, the U.S. Federal Reserve has pumped out $125 billion.
My fellow Americans, just like many of you, my family and I are social distancing. And it's important that everyone take this seriously so that we can beat this thing. And Joe, if you're watching this, 6 foot distance from everyone, buddy. Actually, that's probably a good rule for you to follow at all times. But anyway, Michelle and I are doing fine. But we did just run out of good shows to watch on Netflix. I gotta tell you though, I just started reading up on this whole Bitcoin thing. And boy, oh boy, I think I'm falling down the, what do you Bitcoiners call it? Falling down the rabbit hole. As Michelle and I waited 3 hours just to get inside Costco, we ran into this gentleman who did a hell of a job pitching Bitcoin to us. Jameson Lopp was his name, a real stand-up guy. And he has a great website full of resources. I'm learning so much. I just listened to the audible of The Bitcoin Standard from Sapien the Moose, and I just started Jan Pritzker's book, Inventing Bitcoin. Michelle, if you're ordering more supplies, you better be checking on deals on Lolly and Fold. We need to be stacking sats. Yes, whenever we can, damn it. Stacking sats, right? Am I saying that right? Sup, freaks. Anyway, folks, I just thought I'd share with you what I'm learning. But basically, in the words of the great Murray Rothbard, what has the government done to our money? The more I learn about how we've screwed up the money, the more obvious it is to me that Bitcoin fixes this. There are just so many misconceptions about Bitcoin. But America, I've decided it's time I help clear up those misconceptions. For example, I used to think Bitcoin wasted all this energy. But today, I heard this real all-American guy from Philly. His name's Marty Bent. He's got this podcast, and I heard him explain perfectly and rationally how Bitcoin is actually good for the environment. Heck, it's the real new Green Deal. I don't know about you, America, but I'm a believer in this Bitcoin thing. Might be a good idea for me to get some in case this thing catches on. Well, folks, my fellow citizens, I'm going to continue doing my own research, but stay safe and stay tuned. Michelle, did my VR headset arrive? I need it for Udi's VR Bitcoin meetup. What? Normally I can't borrow it. This Bitcoin thing's important. How many times I gotta tell you?
There are many places to buy Bitcoin. They collect your personal information and jeopardize your privacy. KYC is the illicit activity. BISC is open source. It does not collect user data. You keep your private keys, create or take offers to trade peer-to-peer, and keep your Bitcoin private and secure.
Here we go. All right, guys, we're actually live now, so.
Oh, perfect.
Well, we'll let people kind of start jumping in here. I hope Shinobi can figure out what's up with his Zoom, but we're going to start off with some introductions. Everyone, I'm CK, one of the co-hosts. I'm also joined with Brand BTC, also co-hosting, and we have a fantastic panel today. I'm going to start off with Jason, who is on my right. Why don't you introduce yourself real quickly, and then we'll roll on to everyone.
All
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason. I host the Crypto Insights Journal YouTube channel. Aside from that, I'm also a journalist and writer covering crypto, blockchain technology, and cybersecurity. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Let's go with John, who's on my left.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is John, and I host the Bitcoin Rapid Fire podcast right now. And that's pretty much all I'm doing because I should be in Thailand, but I'm stuck in Canada at the moment. So that's what I'm at.
Did your flight get canceled?
No, the international airport is shut. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not welcoming any non-residents right now.
Yeah, I remember that. I know that Francis has been trying to get the hell out of Canada, and apparently he just can't get a flight that sticks.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think you could. There's still outbound flights, but my issue has been that the Phuket International Airport is closed, and they're not welcoming in non-residents right now. So.
Yep, makes sense. All right, let's
fun winter in Canada.
Let's go to Isaiah Jackson. What's up, man? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Isaiah Jackson, the author of Bitcoin in Black America, also the co-founder of KRB Digital Assets Group, and have the daily show, The Gentleman of Crypto. Glad to be here to discuss Bitcoin. Always fun.
Awesome. And let's go with the CEO of BTC Media under me, David Bailey. Welcome for the first time to Drinks in Quarantine.
What's up, CK? Thank you for having me. What's up, everybody? I'm David Bailey, CEO of BTC Inc. Holder of Last Resort, longtime Bitcoiner. Here. Happy to come in such light circumstances.
Cool. And Matt Odell, what's up?
What's up, guys? My name is Matt. I like Bitcoin. I have a podcast, Tales from the Crypt. Look it up in your favorite podcast app. Yep, happy to be here.
All right, testing. Shinobi, do we have you?
Can you hear me?
We can. I kind of want to hide.
It should be a Google Voice number. It's fine.
Okay.
But this is the shadiest thing that has ever happened with Zoom. On 2 different browsers, on 3 different machines, that singular window would not give any audio to any audio output on my system.
That's quite frustrating. Quick question: do you need to be signed into these other windows, or can I kick them out because they're taking over the stream?
I mean, dude, I'm gonna see what I can do with the phone, but is what it is.
All right, for sure. Oh, here we go. Hide non-video participants. Boom. Oh wait, no, we don't want that. God damn it. All right, well, Shinobi, while we actually have your audio, what's up, man? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry for the pauses and the delay, but I have to hit 2 buttons on the phone to unmute. But yeah, I don't know, just a random loudmouth Bitcoiner from Chicago who is getting very worried about where all of this stuff developing is going.
For sure. Well, I know that I appreciate your commentary on all this stuff. You have some great insights, so thank you for joining the show. Everyone, if for those of you who've not been on Drinks in Quarantine before, we have some rules for today. We can't talk about politics. We are not gonna talk. We're not gonna say the word riot, and we're not gonna say the word fiat. So if you do any of those things, you need a drink, and I'll drink to that. All right. Well, I mean, I guess while we're all here, why don't we start off with a little bit of small talk? How's everyone doing? Anything that's on anyone's mind? Anyone protest?
Every day is a protest.
Is that what buying Bitcoin's about?
That's right.
Nice, peaceful protest.
Yeah, that's actually what this show is discussing Bitcoin as a peaceful protest.
Oh, yeah. No protesting for me in the streets, though. Okay.
For sure.
It's funny, though, because, I know you said not to mention certain words, but it seems like just being in this space, you're protesting against that. You know, especially when you consider every day they're just talking crap about Bitcoin. So just being here and saying I'm in Bitcoin is a protest against that.
That's true. Like, there's an image that was floating around Twitter where a protester was holding a sign that said, "Bitcoin will save us," and the person posting it was like, "Christ," as if like, "Come on, get out of here, dude! Like, get out of here with that shit."
Well, I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine, Crypto NDO, about that, and it's interesting because sometimes we do put a little too much, because we're passionate about Bitcoin. So we'll say things like that, and we're really talking to each other. But the normal person on Twitter scrolling through the feed of all this chaos stops and sees that, but they don't get the context of it. You know, everyone on this call knows how to deal in Bitcoin in some fashion, but a normie on Twitter doesn't. So it's like, well, okay, say that if you want, but put context to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of context that people need to get. Right? It's pretty freaking nuanced.
I think it's like the whole Bitcoin fixes this is useful even in these times. Look, people are going to be upset regardless of what you say, especially in such a highly charged topic like this. But if it just gets them to, like, if it just mind viruses like a little bit to be like, fuck, like, no, like, sorry, can we curse on this thing?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna happen anyway.
Yeah, it's like, no, fuck you, Bitcoin can't fix this. What are you talking about? You're insane. And then maybe a dialogue is started, or maybe they hear that 10 times and then they start to think about it more. But I've definitely been said a few things that might be triggering or insensitive to some using the kind of Bitcoin fixes this framework. And if they want to talk about it, I'll talk about it. But so few do. You know, they just get so angry and emotional and just block you or shut down or whatever.
You know, the difficulty is that if you don't diagnose the correct problem and tackle the right problem, then it's just going to get worse. And so, you know, it doesn't matter how many people feel good today, it's going to be worse tomorrow. So it's like it's hard because you want to have an intellectually honest conversation because there needs to be a solution, but people aren't really interested in a large degree in actually talking about the actual issue. They want to frame the issue in terms that are you know, relatively unsolvable.
Right.
Very true.
Yeah,
and
I think we've seen this before too. The protest and the outcry we've seen it before, and we haven't come up with a real solution. So economically, it has to be the way, because from a violent standpoint, that's not going to solve it in the long term. I don't think people going out in the streets going to be violent for months at a time and take over a hostile. That's just not going to happen. We have drones. I don't think that's really going to happen. But economically, I think, yeah, the focus has to be there, because we've seen this before. I mean, how many protests or uprisings have we seen, and nothing gets solved? No inequality really gets changed. So, yeah, it's just more the same to me, unless what we're doing is a part of it. Economically, it changes. I agree with you there.
I'm sure everybody saw the kid on like the Spanish language news thing that went around a day or two ago, where they asked him like why he was there or whatever. And he just said it straight up, like in as few words as you can. He was like, you know, this protest does nothing. You know, the only thing we can do is opt out. And we do that by buying Bitcoin. And mic drop. And that was it.
Yeah, that was great.
Well, you know, Bitcoin's designed so that it assumes that we're going to fail at all of our attempts to reconcile society, and it's just all going to go to shit. And then we're going to be forced to use Bitcoin because everything else is going to fail. But it's nice to tell yourself that maybe we could consciously, you know, adopt Bitcoin rather than needing like just every other system to implode.
Right. Yeah. That'd be nice.
Wait, so you're gonna take the position that's like everything is gonna blow up and then we're gonna go to Bitcoin? That's kind of like the gold bug stance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the switching costs are too large at this point, or they feel too large. They're not actually too large. The cost of not switching is much larger, but you know, the change. People are so afraid of change, and so, you know, if history is any like example, typically this stuff ends ugly. I mean, the power structure that exists wants to consolidate its power and maintain its power at any cost, and it degrades and degrades and degrades until it explodes. And I mean, there's, as a Bitcoiner, you have like a different time preference and a different kind of global perspective. And it's just like this story has been played out over and over and over again. Like, who would have thought there'd be riots when there's 40 million jobs lost? I mean, it's like this is a very precarious time in the sense that we really need the economy to be turned back on right now, and these protests are happening at the exact moment in which that balance in consumer confidence has to return. And so I don't know how many of y'all are looking to go downtown this weekend for a date with your girlfriend or whatever, or if you're going to go through a stroll downtown and check out the ice cream shop. But a lot of people are not. And so this is going to compound, people not wanting to travel. This is going to compound people not wanting to invest into their businesses or reopen their restaurants. And you could be looking at a situation right now where the economy rapidly deteriorates and the government is kind of locked into a set of decisions in order to continue perpetuating some form of stability. And so I don't think these unemployment benefits can go away. I don't think the PPP funding for small business can go away. I think they're going to have to just keep re-upping it at this point, because as soon as that goes away, it gets uglier, a lot uglier.
Yeah, well, people are already saying that that UBI is coming, because there's no way that they're going to be able to just stop sending people money, expect the economy to just recover like that. That's not going to happen. So they're going to just keep printing money, and it's not going to get back to any sense of normal anytime soon.
Well, we've created like an artificial floor now, right? And we have like a buyer of last resort. We have a payer of last resort too. And so, to take that away is to pull the bottom out. So of course we can't really take it away now. Eventually it'll become the same third rail that we have in other parts of our economy. David said a really good point too. What he's really talking about isn't a gold bug thing. It's an Austrian thing. It's, we as people who have trust can assemble in a way that uses trust in order to create, efficiency leaps in our systems. But, as time goes on and as generations come and as, different, understandings arise, eventually that system deteriorates and a new one kind of takes it over. And so, one of the things I've been wrestling with Bitcoin recently too is maybe Bitcoin is kind of this safety net for everyone that, when these institutions fail, we don't have to start back from zero. We can start back with Bitcoin. And it's almost like a shortcut to kind of reinstilling some sort of participation and kind of communal sense among people.
Anyone here agree with Safety that Bitcoin is going to be like a deflation, like almost as if it's going to slowly be a release valve for the pressure and just slowly allow the new system to get built out in a more peaceful way?
I once thought that was possible, but the way that the timeline has been condensed and moved forward as it has now, and the actions that we've seen taken across the board by central banks and governments, like, it's hard to imagine it could release enough in time for what's being done. I mean, I certainly hope so, of course, but just it's tough to imagine that's how it goes down.
The more money printer go burr, the faster the end is accelerated towards.
Right.
Well, and then you have to think that in order to get as many people involved in the space as possible, you're going to have a massive educational spree so that people know how to use it, how to store it, how to get it where they're not going to get scammed. It's a lot than just saying, hey, use Bitcoin. There's an educational curve that we need to have in place first.
The other thing that I try to stop myself from doing is imagining that you go from one state to another. Like, obviously everything is always in flux. There's no end, right? There's probably not going to be an event where the former system just like there's a funeral for it, and it's like, okay, that's dead and the new system is alive now. Like it's always in flux, right? And you look at how long other systems that have deteriorated further, like Venezuela or other places, have persisted, even though obviously by any objective metric they have failed. So, you know, in that respect, and maybe Safe is right, you know, things will be down, maybe things will be down in the dumps for a long time without the official death knell like this is done. And, you know, during whatever protracted period that persists for, maybe, you know, with each passing day, month, year, you know, Bitcoin is just growing while that other one is stagnating or atrophying or something. But it's so hard to predict, you know, any of this stuff.
You know, the Catholic Church controlled society for a large amount of time. It never, I mean, Catholic Church is still, you know, in every city in the world today. But, you know, they're not the same as what they were. And when the power structure of the Catholic Church collapsed, and I think Tordemeester does some pretty interesting writing on this stuff. But when the Catholic Church collapsed, you know, it was bloody, it was chaotic, it was a complete reorganization of the societal structure, economic structures, and it's, you know, it's what saw the rise of complete outsiders like the Dutch, etc. So, you know, it's interesting. The people who seized control after the collapse of the Catholic Church were actually the people who pioneered financial technology. So it's, you know, the people that were able to demonstrate a better system, the nation of the Netherlands, you know, is able to become the world's superpower just because it has innovations around insurance and around stock markets and around the ability to finance exploration. And I think in a lot of ways, Bitcoin is not ready for the masses, and it won't be ready for a while. But I think the intellectual leadership of people who are building Bitcoin, I do think the time is ready for some of those ideas.
So I
It's
want
never
going to
be ready.
Yeah, I want to hear from Matt and then Isaiah next, and then we can go on to bullish or bearish.
It's never going to be ready, but that's irrelevant. It's going to happen regardless. I've just been enjoying listening. I was having a little bit internet issues, so I was trying to smooth out that bandwidth before I jumped in. I actually have a question for Isaiah. Like, you seemed pretty solemn about the protests and that they wouldn't be effective. We've never seen protests at this scale before, at least in my lifetime. You know, I'm not that young, and still, you know, we have it in cities across the whole country. It does feel like something different this time around. Do you not think that?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because we have 40 million people unemployed. We have a lot of people who are angry about the economic system. It's summertime, college kids are out of school. A lot of people are home from work. It's a perfect storm for a type of protest to be this big as far as what we're seeing in the streets. And I think the only reason I'm solemn about it is because the violent part of it has been co-opted by other groups, in my opinion. I don't think it's the protesters who are there for the right reason, very small amount, but that's what is portrayed on the media. So it'll kind of put out the flames, so to say, of what people are actually fighting for. And the reason I don't think it really works is I'm 31. I've seen dozens of protests. Of course, it feels different because a lot of people, it's a different time. Coronavirus, COVID kind of made it a little different. But the economics, nothing has really changed. Like, nothing's really going to matter if you go back and you're still broke and poor and can't do anything for yourself. What is the only other option is what we're seeing now. So as far as what I mean by it working, you want to have a strong small business class in the Black community. You want to be able to have investments, and you want to be able to be left alone by the people that you pay your taxes to. If you pay taxes, you pay for the police, you pay for every government agency that's working for you. Why is it shitting on us so hard? That will only happen if economically you have leverage. So that's what I mean by it working. But yeah, this does feel a little different because there's so many people just hanging out, and it's warm. People can hang out all night. It's not like it's a December protest and people, you can hang out all day in the summer, all night, and and people can do whatever. So definitely feels different.
I guess the way I look at it is I feel like the powers that be, they pushed it a little bit too far this time. Usually they're greedy, but they leave some scraps available so people they don't get desperate, and it kind of turned into this like perfect storm, which you pretty much alluded to here, where people feel like they have no other option and they're going to the streets. And in terms of violence, I mean, if you have an effective protest, the number one rule of trying to combat an effective protest is to try and co-opt it and, discredit it and divide the people against each other. So I think that the fact that we do see that happening is almost proving that it's more effective than we've seen. I mean, you just said you're 31. We're the same age. It seems way more effective already than any protest we've seen in America up until this point. It almost feels more like a European style protest, where I think they're way better at protesting than us in historical fashion. So I think it's a very positive thing to see. I mean, who knows if we'll actually see any kind of real change out of that. That's why I'm in Bitcoin. But I think it's overall, it's really, really good to see.
Well, as long as you get the political change on top of it, then you have something there. But if it's just politicians and law enforcement playing lip service to "we respect you and your wishes," then you'll be back to square one within a month of this ending.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I mean, that's why we're all here, right? Because there's been lots of protests around the world for lots of years, and some are big and some are small, and some get a lot of coverage and some don't. But once the dust settles and everybody goes home and the energy is gone, then what really changes? Nothing. In fact, usually the problems get bigger because, ironically, the people that are protesting are asking for solutions from the very people that are causing the problems. And that empowers them. That gives them an excuse to get larger and feign doing more. So that's why we're all here. What the kind of one of the interesting things about this time, like I don't think many of them care. The people that have to try to, the PR people in power or whatever, effectively may have to do something. But like the stock market is at all-time highs right now, which is obviously outrageous for so many reasons. But for that group of people or whatever, do they care that a bunch of people are marching on the streets and destroying mom and pop shops when they're wherever, safely away from it, and things have never been better on paper? So I'm not really into the protesting. I think they can bring awareness to certain issues, and that has some benefits, for it to be in the consciousness of a broader group of people. But we all know the problem is the balance of power, or I think we all know that, and a protest isn't going to change that. The only way you change it is to take away the mechanism of power, and I think that's what we're doing here.
I think you hit on a really interesting point, though, which is that there's a crazy juxtaposition happening where, yes, the stock market is at all-time highs, and at the same time, 43 million Americans are without work. And I think that this is the thing that's never happened with these protests, is that there is such a blatant, visceral dichotomy going on between the haves and the have-nots, and there's a systemic issue behind that. And I think that that's, go on, David.
Well, just the system's lost all credibility. It's just not credible. I mean, it's just like people are out rioting in the streets, looting stores, 40 million, Great Depression, and new all-time high in the stock market. It's just not credible.
Well, just like with, money printer go burr, the stock market's been propped up for years. So it's only a matter of time for that bust anyway.
Well, you just keep the printer running. And as long as you control the troops, you keep the printer going. I mean, it's what happens when the stock market is 2, 3, 4, 5 times higher than it is right now. I mean, there's no reason it can't be. So, the same inequality that is ingrained in the system right now, it's about to just accelerate hard. And,
Exactly.
why I worry about the protest is that the people because we're not having an intellectually honest conversation broadly in society, it's like, okay, well, the people who are angry have misdirected anger, and then the people on the other side who are scared, they're scared about the wrong thing. And so you're going to have a reaction that comes from all this stuff, and the reaction is probably not a direction that we want to go as a society. I mean, like, you know, I consider myself a libertarian. Maybe that means I have to drink. But the number of people that are wanting the military to come in to restore order, it's like, yo, people, like, have a little bit of fucking perspective. It's like the military comes in, the military's not going to fucking leave. Like, that will be the new thing. And people just they're going to beg for it to happen.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's ironic that the same people who don't like the president are asking for the military to come into the towns to put down the riots and whatever. Well, who do you think runs it? So, you know, big picture people.
One of the things that I find terrifying, and I think, you know, these protests are more a manifestation of, you know, all the COVID lockdown frustration, unemployment stuff. But, you know, we've been talking about for the last, let's just pick a period, the last 10 years, and how all this easy money has broadened the inequality gap, right? Because the money goes to asset holders, or the phony money goes to asset holders. Everybody else gets their money devalued. Imagine, and, you know, the inequality I think we've seen around the world has been, you know, pretty dramatic over the last 10 years. Imagine when you condense all that into a year. You know, if we're doing like 10 years worth of that process in 1 year or thereabouts, maybe even less, like, how does that inequality manifest in a, you know, dramatically concentrated and you know, way, and the timeline of that just gets way pushed forward as the timeline of everything has, you know. It's a bit scary.
No, it's going to lead to more people being pissed about it, which is going to lead to the people who want stability to use more vicious tactics and more dystopian tactics against the people. And it's going to be a vicious self-feeding loop as people try to, you know, let the system that it can't maintain.
Yeah.
Very true.
All right, y'all. I don't know how much of this is considered political talk, but I feel like we should just all drink to it. I'm going to switch this over to...
I've been drinking.
Me too.
As they talk, I just kept drinking. I was like, we're definitely breaking the rules here.
Yeah, we probably should have. I should have narrowed that down a bit.
I do want to say one thing. You know, the like, speaking truth to power, like, the government does not live in the reality distortion field that they spin for everyone else. And the government knows where their strength of force comes from. And, you know, the more that we are effective at spreading the message of sound money and non-government controlled money, the greater the existential threat we become to the system. And so, you know, one thing that Bitcoin hasn't had to deal with at all is we've kind of been like, you know, this fringe, cute idea. And now we're talking about real revolutionary ideas, not like bullshit revolution ideas, but real revolution ideas that touch the very source of the entire global dollar power structure. And I think that we become the enemies of the state in that matter. And so, like, you know, some of this Antifa stuff getting targeted as a domestic terrorist group, I'm like, again, I'm a hardcore capitalist, but like, that's just not that far away from people who are preaching sound money in the Fed also being on that list. And so, you know, it's a dangerous time, and it's a time that Bitcoiners need to be self-aware about, you know, the importance of preaching the message that we do, but also the dangers that we're going to have to be comfortable with doing so.
Yeah. Well, we do have some vocal members of the space, especially on Twitter, you know, so I can see your point, because someone tagged the wrong person and shit talking on social media. Next thing you know, Mnuchin's trying to pass a new law.
Well, all we need is, you know, if Antifa they just got declared domestic terrorism, right? So they're going to get unbanked. They're about to lose PayPal. They're about to lose all their banks, everything. If they switch to Bitcoin, then we're fucked, right? That's all it takes. We're like 2 steps away. It could happen at any moment. Just be prepared.
Well,
I
that's
completely
why,
agree with you.
I think that's why books like Isaiah's book is important, because people. I don't think a terrorist group of any sort today would think to use Bitcoin as their primary means of transacting, because we all know it's public, right? They'll use something else. They'll use one of those. They'll use a privacy coin, for example. They'll
Shum.
They're not going to run towards the open ledger that the government definitely knows about.
Disagree, because all those shit coins are not liquid at all. There's no services built around them. There's only really one option, and that's Bitcoin.
Well, I think
no, but I like
that's
the
not to say
approach.
that they won't try.
Let's hide the features of Bitcoin and convince them that it's not a threat, and then just pick some random privacy altcoin and be like, that's the motherfucking threat. Like, just
just tell them they're going to use Libra.
we have a new Osama bin Laden, and his name is a Fluffy Pony.
But they don't have to. They don't have to actually use it. They don't have to use it for it to get turned against us. I mean, we see like the ISIS articles, stuff like that. That's the angle. That's the angle I've been most concerned about for a while. And when we're in this more chaotic state and we have a leader who is completely unpredictable, it becomes way more likely. And that's all you need. You just need a couple articles. Maybe they post a donation address. It doesn't have to actually be. ISIS gets the majority of their money through cash. But it doesn't matter. All they need is one Bitcoin donation address, and they're good to go.
Right, and then someone can say, "I told you so." Well, I mean, they're still talking about Silk Road, and how long ago was that? But that's their example of what's wrong with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this is going to happen at some point. Like, I think, obviously the premise is that every attack vector is going to be, they're going to try every attack vector, once it becomes clear that this is more and more a threat to things. So, like, I don't think anything is, off the table as far as they're concerned, and it shouldn't be as far as we're concerned either. Now, I know, it's funny. The last number of years, you're in Bitcoin and it's exciting, number go up, and conferences or Bitcoin Twitter, or just I haven't attended any of those. I've just kind of been on my own personal thing, but it's it's fun.
Bitcoin Bitcoin 2019, I hope.
I'll be at 2020 if it happens.
2019 was great, but
all this recent events has it's been a bit sobering. You're like, oh, this, it's not all fun and games anymore. Like you gotta actually take this a bit more seriously, I think, has been my response, or realization, I guess.
Well, and also one of the trade-offs is too, in the end, regardless of what happens, Bitcoin will be adopted. So it's okay, you can just keep your head down and hide out and let it all go to shit and restart, and Bitcoin, wins out. Or you can go advocate for Bitcoin, get a target on your head, and never get to live to see the day that Bitcoin is, is around.
Founder of BTC Media.
I don't know, dude. You might wanna.
Yeah, I was joking about that. I said all these pictures of the signs going up. I'm definitely on somebody's list now. Shit.
Right?
Nope, I mean, for sure you are.
I've already looked into hiring security. I have some old Marine friends. I mean, I'm not even playing around. And like you were saying, John, it's getting serious now. And it happened so fast. I think it was one of those things where it's oh, holy shit, this is the thing we've been talking about. It has been.
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I mean, this is the third protest I've seen someone with a Bitcoin sign. So, I mean, you have the one saying read Isaiah's book. You have the other guy, Bitcoin Save Us, and you have the guy in Paris with a jacket, right? So it's well, obviously someone's paying attention to that. You know, that kind of stuff, especially the way we share things online. They know, you know, it's on their radar.
The one saving grace is Trump owns Bitcoin. So
oh, you know he does.
We have that going for us.
I mean, you know he does.
Yeah, I know a few people out in LA who they are bankers and they would not want to be named. They have Bitcoin, and their organizations speak out against Bitcoin.
Yeah. Most of the talking heads on CNBC have Bitcoin, even though they talk crap about it all the time. You know they have some.
So that's the one thing Bitcoin really has going for it is the perverse corruption incentive of all the people. Yeah, exactly, and all the people in government that have it that are like, yeah, fuck yeah, money printed will burn.
Well, they're human too, right? They'll make the same calculation. If the writing is on the wall and they're like, whoa, this ship is going down, and they hold some Bitcoin, they're probably not going to advocate for the banning or the
for sure,
whatever ways they try to shut it down.
They'll pass one of those laws saying that you yourself can't hold it, that it has to be in some custodial form.
Smart.
You know, that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
You know, and actually that's the worst part, because that opens us up to more Wells Fargo nonsense where they're opening up fake accounts and screwing with people's money. You know, as soon as they make it so that you yourself can't control it, watch that take off.
And China will social engineer hack the custodians, and next thing you know, like, we lose all of our money.
Exactly. And it's electronic, so what do you do?
All right, I want to transition us to the next segment, bullish or bearish. The first topic here is organizing in person. Obviously, people are doing that a lot right now, but are you bullish or bearish on the future of organizing in person? Let's start with Isaiah.
I would say extremely bullish, but I'll just keep it conservative and say pretty bullish on the future. The reason for my bullishness has not really been what's happened in the past. Is what I think going forward is going to inevitably happen. You can't have a system that we have now. It's a house of cards that's going to fall apart at some point. Now, what happens after that, I don't know, but I am bullish on Bitcoin, and I don't want to throw out any price numbers, but just based on market cap and based on the supply, it's pretty simple to see that the price is going to be bullish.
I don't think he's asking if we're just bullish in general. I think he's asking if we're bullish on organizing in person or not. Right?
Yes, that's correct. No, like just like protesting, like getting together and sticking it to the man. Or is that done?
I think based on recent events in this past week, I'm actually bullish on that. Simply because, like I said before, the stats from before, 40 million unemployed, people out of work, people looking for a solution. I think this will continue for a while, and just talking to people individuals who are out in the streets, they don't see a way out. So I am pretty bullish on that change. That I think is something that is different this time.
Let's go to Matt.
Bullish as fuck. I am so proud of my fellow Americans right now. I sat through the whole COVID bullshit, and I saw people lose their jobs. I saw the stock market rebound while working Americans had to basically sell their stock at the bottom to pay for food because their small businesses were closed. And they closed parks, they closed beaches, they closed all of these things, and no one said a peep. Everyone just went to their phones and went to their social media and they just consumed and just didn't care at all. And I was bearish as hell. I was like the majority of Americans will just roll over and do absolutely nothing. And here we see that is not the case, and that makes me very happy. It makes me proud to be an American. I think it's important that people go out and exercise their rights, and I think that is the ultimate check. It's the ultimate check on power, because if people don't wake up, if people don't realize what's going on, we're screwed. We're completely screwed. And even if this results in an authoritarian crackdown, which I kind of think is going to be the result, at least that will wake people up even more. At least it will, the writing will be on the wall. People will realize what the fuck is going on.
It's true.
Who wants to jump in next?
Crypto Graffiti just said that the closing event of Bitcoin 2020 should be a protest down in Market Street. So we've got some support already.
I'm down.
So what's the question, CK?
Bullish or bearish on organizing / protesting in person?
And why would we be bullish or bearish?
I mean, it's either the government comes in and says you can't congregate, you cannot protest in person, you need to stay inside because of whatever reason, or you can, and then you're bullish. I don't know. I see a lot of signs of like curfews going down, a lot of lockdown happening.
I thought you were talking about some sort of virus or something. I wasn't sure what it was actually.
Just in general.
Something called COVID?
Yeah.
The stream is going to get kicked off if you keep talking about that.
You know, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible, you know, how free we think we are, yet we live in such an echo chamber that a completely fraudulent bullshit sickness can be perpetrated as such a fact that society shuts down. And the Constitution is ripped up, and no one has any rights, and it's all bullshit. And then the scariest part is that even once it's revealed as bullshit, no one wants to acknowledge that. Everyone's too fucking embarrassed about what the fuck went down. And so, you know, you still have Apple and fucking Google charging ahead on their tracing applications. They're going to track you everywhere you go. And no one even cares about it anymore. It's like not even a thing anymore. I mean, go ask how many protesters are worried about catching COVID. It's like, it has no credibility. The system is completely fucking broken. It's like you can tell that it's like a voice recording and like they're what do you call it, lip syncing a song. And like you're sitting there watching this play out and they think everyone is like convinced by the charade, but it's a joke. It's a joke. So I think in-person events definitely come back. But I think that that's going to be come with sports, and I think it's going to be a continuation of this culture war over, you know, is the, you know, COVID real or not real? But you know, as soon as events come back and people aren't dying, like, dude, people want to live their lives. I mean, people want to see their families. I mean, it's like it's really sad how many people they've convinced to sit in their home and like kind of wilt away.
Real quick, Isaiah, you still there? I think he needs to peace out. You want to do your last word? If not, no worries.
Yep, real quick, I can give my last. Sorry, I have a pregnant girlfriend having issues to have to deal with that right now. Sorry, I have to do it.
Congratulations, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, first child, so I'm new to this, but yes, I want to thank you for your time. I definitely want to come back next time so I can hang out the full time, but have to deal with that. And I'll see you all soon. I appreciate the conversation, fellas. I'll definitely
see you later, man.
On Twitter as well.
Be well.
Feel free to jump back in if you can, but no worries. Have a good one.
Yeah, if I can get back, I'll try. But
no stress. Thank you for joining.
One more holdler on the way.
I love it.
Another Bitcoin, baby. Thank you all.
Yeah, no, the events game has to come back. I mean, universities are going to collapse if the athletic sports don't come back. I mean, but that was like the debate like a month ago. Now I feel like it's like that's behind us, and no one even really cares about this stuff anymore as a real health concern.
Yeah. I mean, a month and a half ago, Raleigh, North Carolina was saying that protesting was a non-essential activity.
Right. Well, that's actually what I was about to point out, because for the last week, we've seen people on top of each other, close quarters. Many weren't not wearing masks, getting tear gas shot at them. When we were just told it's a lung issue, you got to stay 6 feet away from each other, and you have to wear a mask. So what happened? What happened between that point and this point? Right. And today we had the memorial services, which I hope everyone watched, and there was no. I didn't see social distancing. Did any of you see social distancing? So now what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. My take on it, I see kind of two sides to this question. There's the organizing in person in terms of, going to in-person events, and then there's the organizing in person that is organizing in order to accomplish a goal, say like a protest in person. I think I'm actually bearish on that part. I think that we're going to see this exorbitant response from the government come in and just overwhelm and crush these protests, regardless of how peaceful they are. They'll make them look not peaceful even if they are peaceful, and in order to save face for the man in charge. I also think kind of what David, I don't remember who it was, alluded to, the fact that we've got these more and more apps that are going to track your location. And even now we're talking about like, don't bring your phone to the protest because everyone's going to know you're there and you're going to be on the list. I think just there's more and more ways that we can get more and more constrictive around people's ability to organize. And I think that ultimately it's a bearish thing, at least in person, if not, in general. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
I like how you said 2 cents.
I think I'm like, there's 2 aspects to this. One, I don't think these I think this sort of unrest accelerates things. And so if we're looking at it through the lens of accelerating the hyper Bitcoinization, as it were, then the more rapid degradation of the existing system plays into that. And is that a good thing? Yeah, I guess it is, because I want it to happen as fast as possible. But I don't think, and I'm with everyone who said, like, I can't believe people's reactions to the shutdown. Like, and not even, look, I wasn't, in the streets or doing anything. I just, even in conversation, anyone that I spoke to, nobody took issue with like the liberty or rights aspect of this whole thing. Like, people were like genuinely hysterical and fearful about the virus, or, they felt they were compassionate from a public health perspective and thought it was like, the right thing to do, etc. And I don't, in my immediate environment, nobody really had an issue of like, the fact that the government was telling you that what you can and can't do. And in this case, you can't leave your house to go and make a living for yourself. And then we have this event where all these protests popped off. And I just think they addressed the wrong issue. And so I don't know how helpful ultimately on a macro level they are. So on the one hand, I'm bullish because it just creates more disorder and unrest, and it maybe reveals some of the things about what's going on, and that accelerates things from a Bitcoin perspective. But like, are they effective at achieving their stated goals? I don't really think so.
Well, for me, I'm bullish because people are starting to come out and do their thing. People aren't living in fear in their houses anymore. Where my concern is that only while the media is in opposition to the person in the White House. Because as soon as the media is on the same page as the person in the White House, they're going to flip it over and make it seem like the people in the streets are the problem. And that's where my concern is. So I'm cautiously bullish.
But the younger generation isn't watching CNN. Like, everything comes through Twitter. There's no, I'm not listening to the media at all, pretty much. I see newspaper headlines that my dad sends me or whatever, but that's it. Like, there's no, and the funny thing is Trump eroded a lot of that as well, right? With his whole fake news agenda. So at this point, I think their power is diminishing extremely fast. And, I don't see how long that is left. Like, how long is left where like people are watching their local news and taking that in as their main source of information?
So there's two worlds though. There's the world that lives completely outside of the system, and then there's the world that lives within the system, I guess. And like the fact that they were able to convince everyone that they were going to die from coronavirus means that the media still has influence. The fact that they were able to convince everyone that Russia stole the election and they were able to get 4 years of time spent on that shows how much power they have over the delusion of the public. And so they still are powerful. But then there's this other world of people, which I think are the people who are to a large degree out protesting. It's the people who don't vote. It's the people who are just like completely unplugged from the system. And I think that, I mean, they haven't watched CNN for a while, but that group keeps growing in size and they're getting their information from other places. And there's going to be continued conflict between those two realities that are unfolding.
Except that Twitter was freaking out about Corona too. Social media was freaking out about Corona. There was a lot of peer pressure involved in that wasn't necessarily mainstream media doing the pressure, right?
Definitely,
Well,
definitely social pressure.
Yeah, it's social pressure, but that's like, okay, you create the advocacy groups, the political groups, the local religious groups, all the places that politicians go in order to go bank votes or get people to activate for them. That's the same political organizations, et cetera, that can express social pressure. And, you know, no one is a fucking scientist on this call. Very few people are scientists in America, yet everyone fucking thought that like they knew what was going on with this virus to the degree that it was worth shutting down America and ending the Constitution.
This is the thing that pissed me off like almost the most out of all this, or one of the top things is that, and I knew this before, and you know, it was, you know, it's always been the case, but it was so egregious and obvious this time, is that there just seems to be no regard for truth anymore. Like that's not the thing upon which people base their decisions. It doesn't seem to be that relevant. Like, what's the truth of this matter? It doesn't matter. My emotional response is this. What about that? It doesn't matter. My emotional response is this. Like, it's not like people, even I know it's hard to get good data and blah, 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 but like the efforts just around COVID for like good contextualized data to put what was happening in a broader context of, you know, risks to your life when you step out your front door in the morning and go about your way in the world. Like that was just absent. And it was just 5,000 people died today. You should be horrified, you know? And like it's similar things with, you know, what's happening with the protest now. It's like nothing is taken in context. It's just a bad thing happened and it's horrible. And everything needs to be turned upside down to fix it, regardless of any other bad things that are happening or threats or whatever. So it's just disheartening to know that like the world operates on something other than trying to form decisions based on truth or accurate data.
So here's what I would say is, and this kind of marries what you said with Matt a little bit, but you know, the legacy media ultimately hasn't seen its power erode, because it still has the institutions paying attention to it, and it can set this institutional narrative. And, you know, while they've seen their ability to kind of dominate the conversation as a whole, they've adapted and they've been able to set what everyone's talking about to be in the context of politics. And by putting it in the context of politics, it removes the need for absolute truth to enter the system, because there are just two sides. You're either on the left side of the truth or you're on the right side of the truth. And you don't need to worry about what the facts are, because you just kind of listen to who, like, whatever is ideologically consistent with how you already see the world. And so it removes the need to look for truth for people, because they can understand the world through what this narrative that they're receiving is telling them. And by doing so, they never have to, you know, divert from kind of this path that they're on. And I think looking for what the absolute truth is diverts you from that path, and is therefore scary and almost difficult to perceive what the actual truth is, because it's so different from what you're actually looking at and understanding.
So, I would maybe push back on one thing you said, John, is that it seems like truth doesn't matter now. And it's like, I don't know if truth has ever mattered.
Right. That's why I prefaced it by saying, like, I know that's always been the case. It's just so egregious now.
Yeah. I mean, or it's equally as egregious, but we have the mechanism enabled to be able to see it.
Sure,
and it's like,
sure.
It makes me kind of feel like how much shit have we been told that is like it rooted in our narrative that we think about America, about us, about what, that is probably just built on total lies. And, it's not like America would be the first society to do that. It's the cultural mythology that we tell ourselves. But the internet, it's like in a macro sense, it's like we haven't seen a technology like the internet come that allows people to pierce the reality distortion field since the printing press. I mean, that was really the last time. And like, what happened then? It's like, oh, it turns out that not like everyone actually makes decisions based on like what God tells them to do. I should think for myself. And then, dude, that's when shit changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's happening now, right? So maybe it's a good thing that so many people are seeing the world is not operating based on truth, right? Because it means that, like you said, that you are piercing the veil, you are able to see things a little bit more clearly, and we all know the internet has had like a massive effect on that process over the last 20 years. But I think it's one of those cases that it's always darkest before the dawn. Like things reach a crescendo, like a good process is happening simultaneously to a bad process reaching its zenith, sort of thing. And maybe that's just the yin and yang of how the universe gets down. I don't know.
It's like Bitcoin. It's the price is always highest right before it's about to crash.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, is it time to transition to the next topic? The next one is bullish or bearish on surveillance capitalism. I'm gonna go with Matt Odell on this one.
Damn it! I put the thumbs up for new topic, but I'm not. Bullish is the wrong word. Surveillance capitalism surrounds us on a daily basis. We have corporate surveillance built into the system. We are all being surveilled 24/7. I am bullish on people realizing that fact. And I think when they get arrested, when their friends get arrested, when their family gets arrested because of corporate surveillance, then it becomes real. I have so many friends who have just gone to the complacent side. Privacy is dead. There's no use fighting it. And that kills me inside because I've devoted so much of my life to trying to fight that. And I think that the fact that we're hitting a crescendo here, that we're going to hit this point where people, it's just right in their fucking face, that hopefully we can see some change. But we're at all-time highs right now. The top might be in. It's close. We might have one more pump in corporate surveillance. There's like a rip your nads off pump in corporate surveillance, but we're close. We're really close there.
So you think it ends? Do you think people will get woke to it?
Well, look, my video guide for installing Graphene OS right now is sitting at about 5,000 views, right? I feel like that is a very good, it's a very good data point in terms of how much people care here, right? We have Google and Apple control maybe 95% of the phone market. People are walking around with surveillance devices in their pocket. We have digital payments in terms of credit cards and Venmo, even Cash App, who's a sponsor of my podcast, Disclosure, where all their payments are being tracked 24/7 by not just one company either. Like you swipe your card at Walmart, like Walmart's tracking you, Visa's tracking you, 10 other companies are buying that data and trading it around. Like this is massive, and people are just ignoring it. They're completely not realizing the effect that this surveillance has. And if we get to the point where it's right in your face, if that doesn't do it, then I don't know what does. I don't know. I don't know. Like it either exists forever or we hit this blow up point where people realize like my privacy matters. I'm going to treat that like it's valuable because at the end of the day, it's one of the most valuable things we have.
Well, seeing as though we have no more panelists right now, let's go to DB. What's your take on this?
We need more Sybil attacks. We need more people faking identities out there. But I mean, honestly, what is going to happen is America's becoming China. The Western world is becoming China. We are moving towards the WeChat world, and it is a dystopian world that is horrific. And I wish, the optimist in me wishes that people will one day care about themselves at all, I guess, broadly, but I mean, especially about their privacy. But I think China tells us that, not only do they not care, but they're eager to tell on their neighbors so that their social credit score can take up a few points. So, people are mice. If you feed them sugar water, they will return. And I mean, it will. I mean, what I do agree with Matt is that when people start getting arrested and their family members start getting arrested, it'll open their eyes. They'll be too afraid to say anything about it because they won't want to be arrested too. So it will build and build and build until it hits a breaking point. And when it breaks, what's going to happen is it's going to break like the same way the financial system will break. It will break all at once because the government will keep going all in again and again and again so that no matter how big a crisis is, they can persist through it until the one crisis that's going to be too big for them to persist through, and every system is going to collapse at the same time.
Jason, John, both of you guys stepped away for a second. Are you guys familiar with what we're talking about?
Yeah, I could hear you. I was just in the other room. I had to go into my office.
No worries. Sorry, go for it, John.
What was the question?
Well, real quick.
Yeah, what was the question again?
The question was bullish or bearish on surveillance capitalism. And then Brand, what's up?
We've got two comments in Periscope. JG217 saying no way surveillance capitalism ends, and the Kirk of Cali saying we're long gone. So clearly there's some optimism in Periscope right now around surveillance capitalism.
And so just so we're clear,
they're not going to give us their ability to track us. That we can forget about that. I mean, they've been dealing with the Patriot Act since 2001. They're not going to stop.
Surveillance capitalism is like private companies enabling like government surveillance. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think it's
not
just
continue? Government surveillance?
Do you think it's going to continue to thrive or no?
Yeah, I think it will continue. I don't want it to, obviously, but I think the vast majority of people aren't even going to be aware of it, let alone spend the time to figure out how to avoid it. So I think, like's already been said, it's probably going to continue until it reaches a breaking point where people don't put up with it anymore. But and this is, Matt, what you were saying earlier about the protests, as I think I've expressed, I'm pretty against how the protests are going down, but that just single year nugget, that one nugget of that people are just, even if they're not thinking about things clearly, even if they don't even know what solution they're really looking for or whatever, but just that they said enough is enough is somewhat encouraging, because so many people are just, this is me, but so many people are just kind of zombie, like they'll take whatever is given to them. And I don't know, in terms of surveillance, when they reach a breaking point, if ever, for that. Some people will probably take it as much as you want to give it to them.
What we're looking at right now is mass education of the privacy fucking quagmire we're in. Like, that's what we're looking at. Like, people are learning. They're learning the hard way. They're going to learn the hard way. Like, everyone has to fucking learn. You have to touch the stove. That's what happens. And they're going to figure it out. We have signal, we have encryption. We have the tools. We have the tools to make this mass surveillance. We have Bitcoin. We have the tools to make this mass surveillance more difficult. The question is if people are going to wake up and actually fucking do it. And I think these are the type of situations that will educate a shit ton of fucking people. And they're going to educate their kids. You know, Isaiah's going to tell his kids, you know, you have to take your privacy seriously. Like people are, that's the only way this happens.
You're 100% right, but like, let's look at the incentives too, right? Like, I know we've all had a million conversations about Bitcoin with people, right? And you have these conversations, and you ask a lot of questions, and it's a pretty like genuine, involved conversation. They get it, you explain it well, and there's the element of greed. Like, not only do you have to like believe in what I'm telling you, but like, you could make money by doing this, and still they're like, whatever, like whatever. And with the privacy thing, that like incentive, that direct, you know, self-benefiting incentive is not there. So you could tell, like, until you're blue in the face, like all the different reasons why they want to take their privacy more seriously and why they want to shun any sort of surveillance that they may be subject to. But what is it that's going to incentivize them to change? What could be that bad about that process? Or what's the upside of them taking the fucking time to change?
Alternatively, you don't have to tell a Chinese person why VPNs are important. You don't have to tell a Venezuelan why sound money is important, independent of the state.
But only
like they figure it out when they have a need. They figure it out.
But only 1 or 2 percentage points of the Chinese population uses VPNs. You know, like, I mean,
and it's mostly for Facebook. They don't give a fuck.
You know, and you know, I don't disagree with the sentiment
or
overall.
Instagram.
But, you know, I think that one thing that's maybe a little bit different is like there are basically, and I may be oversimplifying this, but there are basically like 2 geopolitical factions in the world now. It's like China and the Western powers, and the Western powers are a monolith. And, you know, the desire for tracking people across borders, across nations exists because it's really just one government with the kind of illusion that it's many governments. Well, you know, as soon as we live in a society where there actually are independent nations that have independent geopolitical interests, then all of a sudden there's going to be a interest, not letting the data of their citizenry be trafficked to other places. And so, you know, why people, like, at the end of the day, like, I agree, like, people should care about their privacy, but to the everyday person, they want to buy a house, they have to get a mortgage. Their mortgage requires them to go have a government-issued ID. They're going to do what it takes to live in society. Not everyone is ready to die a revolutionary. And so as long as that's the case, you know, people are going to play by whatever rules their government states, and their government is going to state whatever rules is in the geopolitical interest. And, like, you know, China's done a good job of kind of isolating their country and completely ideologically controlling their population. And they had to shut everyone out in order to be able to do that. And so that's kind of what the West has done, except the West just has populated all of Europe, Australia, you know, the what do they call it? The 9 eyes surveillance state.
The 5 eyes.
5 eyes.
25 eyes.
Yeah.
And like,
so I think that, like, until there's differing geopolitical interests there, they will want to team up to spy.
And just to that point, and I know this is obviously like an N of one sort of thing, but I lived in China for 10 years, and they, like, at least my friends, you know, kind of, you know, between 25 and 40 years old, professional, educated, all that kind of stuff. They know about all of this, right? Like, they know the surveillance state. They know about, you know, the stuff that China, you know, keeps in its dark closet that they don't, you know, publish and stuff, like all that kind of, like Tiananmen and all that stuff. They know it all, right? They've heard rumblings, and then they've investigated and, you know, talked about it with friends, VPN, whatever. Nobody cares, because they have an opportunity to make a good living for themselves, because the economy's been doing really well for the last few decades, and they've improved their quality of life, and they're crazy nationalistic. They're like, yeah, that was unfortunate, or that, you know, or if that, like, so few have any qualms about it.
Well, and you also have to remember that for a lot of people, the world that they would need in order to make Bitcoin the standard of their financial lives is probably not a world a lot of them would want to live in, because a lot of things would have to crash before that happened. And we just saw how willing people are to go along with whatever they're told in order to keep some semblance of normalcy. right? So yeah, it's going to be a long time before we have mass people rushing into Bitcoin like that.
Just
we
to,
don't need
juxtapose
chaos for Bitcoin to be successful.
2 months ago, everyone was excitedly talking about how we were going to get these contact tracing apps that we would know exactly who interacted with who, so that we would be able to track down this virus and contain it. And fast forward 2 months later, and people are being put on lists because they're showing up in places where Antifa is or where a protest is going on. And it's these two sides of the exact same coin that we're seeing play out so plainly in front of our eyes in the matter of 2 months. It's crazy.
But I've seen the opposite perspective, because I've been advocating for people to take their privacy more seriously. And those contact tracing apps, like the idea that Google and Apple were going to release contact tracing built in at the system level, the Indian app that I don't know, I can't pronounce the name of, that starts with an A, like this woke people up. Like people started to care more about privacy because of these transgressions. Like and was it everybody? No, of course not. But dominoes you got to start the domino somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And I refuse to not be optimistic. I refuse to just bow down and just say, like, fuck no. And I look at it and I see people waking up, and I think, is it going to be clean? No, it won't be clean. It's going to be dirty as fuck. Like, people are going to get burned all over the place. I might get burned. I worry about it all the time. I self-censor myself. Probably not enough, but it's going to happen. Like, people are going to realize I refuse to not be bullish on humanity.
Well, my only concern is that more people were mad when Apple pushed the U2 album onto their iTunes than when they found out they were doing this. I mean, that concerns me, that there was more of an uproar across the spectrum when they made you listen to some music.
Well, the fucked up part of that was that it was a platinum album.
Huh?
The fucked up part of that was then they pretended it was a platinum album, in my opinion.
In the Name of Love is still my jam, though. But I mean, that's the thing, is that, we're talking about, I mean, it's not just, it went from, we're going to put this on your phone so that you're aware of when you're around someone who has been infected with COVID, right? That's what they all told us. But what did I read about a month ago, that people were the people they were arresting, they were contact tracing. So I'm like, what do you mean you're contact tracing the people you just arrested? Like, what is that? And they just kind of brushed it off like, oh no, don't worry about it. But what does that mean? What are you doing? And that's the kind of questions people should be asking themselves when anything like this that just gets pushed onto your device gets put there. That should be the first question.
I'm just happy that we don't have Neuralink yet, and that they're able to monitor our thoughts. But in the death of any civilization, a secret police and a surveillance apparatus is something that comes along in like the final 2 innings of a baseball game. So I would imagine it will keep ratcheting up as like people are more and more fearful of losing their grip on power, and then it will come all crashing down. And the one thing is like you mentioned one keyword there, surveillance capitalism. If you want to pay people to spy on each other, at the end of the day, you got to be able to pay them. And at one point in time or another, the ability to keep paying people to narc on each other will go away, and it'll kind of solve itself.
Sure.
I think this is a good place to transition actually to the next topic, which is bullish or bearish on dissident tech, which is the opposite of surveillance capitalism. Let's go with John on this one.
Oh, bullish as fuck. I mean, I wish I was more like engrossed in it. I've been falling down a little bit on that. So it's something that I got to push to the top of the list. But yeah, absolutely. Bullish.
Anything else? Anything specific?
Well, dissident tech, you mean like the tools of,
A freedom.
Yeah. Anything specific? I mean, Bitcoin is my major one. Nothing that I'm comfortable. Nothing that I've sussed out quite enough yet to have a real material impact on things. So I'll let some other geeks chime in on that one.
Jason?
Was it the shirt that said geek? What? Well, but no, definitely bullish, because everyone should be using a VPN. Everyone should learn how to use Tor, and just don't make it so obvious. Like I tell people, there's nothing in the law that says you need to put your actual name on social media. You know, if you sign up for Facebook, there's no reason to give them your actual information. You don't have to do that. You know, they're being deceptive with you. Why don't you be deceptive with them? So definitely bullish on that.
Do you guys think that the masses are going to care, though? Or is it just the small minority that takes it up?
It doesn't matter. It's about empowering the individual. Internet, encryption, 3D printed guns, Bitcoin. Bang.
Yeah, the 3D printed
Bullish.
guns one is one that I'm starting to track more closely and pretty interested in.
They went after Cody hard behind that. You know that.
Well, he was,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he was just an idiot for signing up for that service. They got him for something completely unrelated to the 3D printed guns.
Right? But as soon as they found something, they were, you know,
Sugar daddy. Don't sign up for sugar daddy.
Man, who would have thought that'd get you in trouble?
If you're gonna go rogue, you better do better than that.
Keep your as possible.
Well, but I mean, and that's the thing, is to your point about, you know, the 3D printing, and people are going to find a way to do it, but like you said, it's on the individual level. You're not going to have a mass adoption of these tools just because people don't want to have to get out of their comfort zone. And that's the main reason, one reason why we have a slow adoption of Bitcoin, because people don't want to take the time to learn how to do that when they can just use their credit card.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hear CK's opinion on this, because I feel like he's bullish as fuck.
I don't know. I think that the tech is growing, and as the UX improves and the network effects around the tech improves, that there's a chance. I think that, like, looking at something like Jitsi starting to blow up and really become something that could rival Zoom in the future is hopeful. Like, Matt shakes off like it's not nearly as good, but like it could be good enough.
We're on Zoom.
I need it's strictly because of my poor due diligence on Jitsi. But I mean, I'm curious, Matt. Like, I'm not using graphene on my phone. I got an iPhone.
But you will.
So I mean, like, what is it going to take for people to just default use graphene?
Their friends, family getting arrested. That's what's going to take. If we weren't bullish on, if everyone in this chat room wasn't bullish on Dissident Tech, we'd just be using Ethereum. Why are we even Bitcoining?
So you have to give a time frame for bullish or bearish.
Oh man, well, I mean, I guess the next 12 months is more interesting.
Oh.
So, you know,
lower your time preference.
So over the short interesting.
Over the short term, I think I'm probably, I think Dissident Tech is a 1-to-1 correlated with individualism, and I think I'm bearish on individualism in the short term and the individual in the short term, as we go into the final chapters of collectivist ideology. I think it will be dangerous to be an individual in a time of collectivist ideology. But in the collapse of the collectivist ideology, it's individualism that will blossom and bloom. And so I'm unbelievably bullish in a mid to long term, but in the short term, I think this erosion of our rights and liberties is going to just be put on pedal to the metal. Yeah. And I'm worried about stuff like, I've always been worried about things like, okay, Tor is funded by the U.S. Air Force. is there some back door we're unaware of right now where we're giving them a list of every dissident to flag? You know, like, are we self-identifying ourselves to just like hand over, like, these are the real problem people? So, but you know, there's one piece of dissident tech that I'm very bullish on, and that is the rifle. And you know, in a time of unease, there is an inherent intuitive sense of I need to get myself the ability to commit retribution, commit violence, basically. And you know, the more looting that happens, the more people want guns. The more chaos that spreads, the more people want guns. So I think that that's bullish.
But now, in fairness, when the coronavirus started, people were loading up on guns because they were being told the police weren't coming to help them. So it didn't even take a riot to get people armed up. It just took this, hey, all of a sudden you're gonna have to take care of yourself.
Dude, in Nashville, it's like, hey, you need to have a gun. People go buy guns. Oh, there was a school shooting. You need to go buy guns. Oh, you need to get rid of your guns. Time to go buy guns. It's like every you know, Titans won the playoffs. Need to go buy guns. You know?
Well, what's that saying? If they tell you that you don't need one, you need to go get two.
1.7 million guns were sold last month, 80% year over year. 40% of those buyers were new gun buyers.
Well, I'm waiting for the Golden Cross, where the number of new guns sold weekly exceeds the number of unemployment claims newly filed.
The Golden Cross.
And I agree with that, but you contrast that within Canada a month or two ago. Horrible tragedy in Nova Scotia, you know, shooting rampage, 20 people were killed. And I believe 2 out of the 3 guns were sourced illegally from the U.S. and another one was some other, well, I think it might have even been in license, but I shouldn't say because I don't know the exact details. But I know some of them came from across the border. And Trudeau seized upon this opportunity to ban 15, I didn't even know there was 1,500 styles of a military style assault rifles. That was the political term that they put on them, to just turn around and ban them all. Just say like, yeah, they're all banned now. So, and we already had obviously much tighter gun restrictions in most places in the U.S., but just, you know, that one thing, and you know, who cares why guns were legal in the first place and why people wanted to own them and everything. Just horrible tragedy. They're all gone, or a lot of them are gone.
I'll answer that question. Why did people want guns? Because people were serfs and they lived as slaves on farms, and the lord or the person that they had to call king had cannons. And if you had cannons, you had the ability to wage war. And so you were a slave because you didn't have the ability to defend yourself at scale. And the musket was the weapon that liberated the world. So that's why we have fucking guns.
Yeah.
Because we need to take down fucking people with cannons.
And that's what I'm saying. And like, obviously the founding fathers in the States knew that was a critical component of, you know, even though they put together this great, you know, this relatively great system, they knew that it still was susceptible to falling to tyranny, and that the people needed this mechanism to hold them in check. And in Canada, the response you always get is, bro, you don't need an assault rifle to go hunting, bro. And no, like, it's not even part of the culture that people think that there may be another reason for gun ownership, both individual self-defense and a check and balance against a tyrannical government. That does not enter the conversation. It's, why do you need a AR-15 for hunting, bro? The only thing it does is kill people, like in mass shootings. So of course we should get rid of it.
In America, the gun control debate is over. For the next 20 years, people are going to be talking about these past week, and that's going to be their defense of gun ownership. Over the next month is going to be why the encryption debate is over in America. Once people start getting arrested en masse, once their family members start getting en masse, the encryption debate will be fucking dead for 2 decades. So this is where I'm coming from. This is where I see this happening, and I think this is an overwhelmingly positive development.
Well, and to Matt's point, remember a couple of years ago, getting your DNA test was all the rage, right? You had all these companies. We can test your DNA and find out your background. Well, then they found out that they were giving that information to law enforcement and tracking people down based on the DNA you gave them. You don't see those commercials as much as you used to, right?
I did that shit.
You know, it's even a little bit spookier. They only need about 15% of people to take DNA tests, and then they can prove any crime because they can say, oh, you're a genetic match to this degree, so therefore it must be a relative. And so now we can limit the pool of potential suspects to 100 people, and then it's fucking done. So
that's how they caught the Golden State Killer. He didn't take the test. His granddaughter or something like that. I mean, I think it was 2 generations. So yeah,
it was like a cousin, right? It was like a great cousin or something. Like that's the fucked up part about DNA testing is that you're actually doxing the privacy of people that haven't even been born yet. You're like, you should not have the right to. I'm very conflicted there because I'm very big on personal rights, but like you're literally sacrificing the privacy of people that aren't even existing yet. Like how do you balance that fact? Like I would really like to see, and like I understand the coolness of both disease testing and ancestry testing. So I mean it'd be nice if there was some kind of blind privacy preserving way of doing it. You know, hopefully we will see some kind of alternatives rise up in that perspective.
You have to somehow get your DNA without doxing it and then encrypt it and then only, use it or send it to services.
Zero knowledge proofs, bro.
Yeah,
exactly. So I don't even know.
Ethereum will do this.
You could just, pay with cash.
Dude, so I don't even know exactly where this ends up, but thinking about DNA testing, what you're really doing is you're revealing your source code. And because of like every single person has bugs in their source code, we all have vulnerabilities. What's terrifying is that, there are certain chemicals that we don't have the correct enzymes to break down. And like some metal could kill me that wouldn't kill anyone else in this group. And all you need to understand what that is to look at the source code and see what I'm vulnerable to. And so what's really scary too is like, wait, you just lagged. I missed exactly what you said.
DB, you're lagging hard. Continue, Bran.
I thought Matt was open source. He wants everybody's source code to be out there in the public and in the in the open.
Well, so this is actually.
By the way, Tina incoming. Tina incoming.
But what happens? Like, is there, by everyone revealing their source code, do we begin to start moving towards like an open source human genetic code that all of a sudden, we can all work on each other's code together, and in a few generations you have a code with much less bugs? I don't know. That seems really dystopian and utopian at the same time.
The problem is with all of this stuff, we're always going to be tiptoeing along the edge of like, is it all going to go to hell, or is it like, all good? Like to the question earlier about will people be interested in privacy tech? Well, no, until it gets to a point that they're sufficiently motivated to do so. So like we said earlier about the kind of the balance of everything, like if things get bad enough, then people will rationally think I need to find solutions to mitigate how badly I'm influenced by these bad circumstances. So, of course, we all want to see like innovation and novelty and cool shit in the future, but there's just always going to be two sides to it. So we're going to have to constantly be navigating that.
So as we're on this topic of genes and dystopian shit, can I just bring up an idea that I heard the other day that I had never thought of before and freaked me out? Please. It was when I was being told about the whole Bill Gates conspiracy or whatever around coronavirus. And, one thing I did not know is, I've never really looked into how vaccines work or what gene therapy is, et cetera. And I did not realize that gene therapy is basically introducing a type of virus to someone's genetics to carry a piece of genetic code to permanently change those genes forever. The guy in China who did some of this with some of those babies, he gave them immunity to AIDS, but also the kind of, I think, the DNA part of your DNA that is related to intelligence as well.
This is CRISPR, right? Like
CRISPR, right? Yeah. So you can you can change your genes. Well, it's a choice to have gene therapy not be viral. For example, like I can actually engineer a virus that's going to change your genes. Except I can choose to engineer that virus so that it's highly contagious. And so you can spread effectively what you could call a vaccine. You could spread that horizontally through society by just infecting one person and then letting them spread that like a sickness. And so in theory, you could create a virus that has no symptoms that you're actually sick, and that when you catch it, you're asymptomatic, but it does change your genetic code. And you could just release these into society and just change people's genetic code without them even knowing that they ever caught anything. How crazy is that?
Well, they did put chloride. What's that they put in the water?
Fluoride
for the teeth, right? Did anybody get a vote on that?
It's like, I mean, you know, you get someone sick. It's like, unless you're willing to like literally not talk to anyone, you have the potential to have your genes edited without your agreement. Whatever the term is.
Yeah.
Well, what they'll end up doing is they'll sell it as a public good thing. You know, like if it ever comes up, they'll say it's something that, well, we did it for your own good, and because we have this thing coming, and we needed to protect everybody.
Well, for sure, that's like every evil genius starts off with like, hey, if we just release this, we just change people's genes this way, we could cut their caloric intake that they need by 20%. I mean, like you can see how people like start. It starts off with like the world needs this genetic edit. Becomes like, like now we're just like masterminding what your genetic code should look like. I don't know. Crazy topic. I don't know a lot about it, but I had no idea this was
going
even
down, buddy.
I hate to also add one more bearish thing to this, but the first person who invents the virus that changes people's genetic code gets a Nobel Prize. The second person gets an A in their biology lab, and it just like it's very quick and very easy for it to go from state-of-the-art science to something that anyone could do if they have, a lab they can work in, to you can build a lab in your basement.
Well, they sell CRISPRs, so I mean, you can.
That's bullish, isn't it?
I want to introduce Tina because Tina just jumped in the chat. What's up, Tina? We're talking about Dissident Tech.
I gathered. Hey, guys.
Hey, Tina.
Hey.
I think one of the important things about some of this, because there are conflicting things. The idea of CRISPR and viruses is pretty interesting, actually. I could see something like that. I actually used to be very interested in genetics and genetic technology, but I should have pursued that. That would have been smart of me, but I didn't. But what it points to is the need for having really good laws. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of really good laws, because at the end of the day, there are tremendous benefits that come with gene sequencing in terms of being able to target specific diseases with specific medicines. The benefits are staggeringly huge. It changes life expectancy, it changes outcomes, it's very big. But at the same time, we need to have the technology to prevent that from being abused, which the laws which prevent it from being abused, and people have to really understand how important that is. What's unfortunate is that people don't understand a lot of things. Most people don't spend the time thinking about things, and they don't really have the bandwidth. They spend more time thinking about the Kardashians. A lot of people spend time thinking about putting food on their table, and they're more concerned with mundane parts of their life, which is important to get by, than they're concerned about thinking and looking forward 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And that's difficult for most people. But without good laws, you'll never be able to protect these things. The Second Amendment was put in the Constitution specifically for rebellion against the government. That's the reason it's in the Constitution. It's in the Constitution because they rebelled against King George and the English. It's only in there for that reason. It's not in there for self-defense. It's not in there for hunting. The Second Amendment is in there for only one thing, and that is to preserve a free people, because the founding fathers knew what it was like to fight for their freedom and knew that this was absolutely important. This has been lost in our discussions, and it's a shame. Unfortunately, the prior several days has proven to a lot of people that they may need weapons for self-defense, because when crowds get unruly, that lots of problems happen, and police may not be there for you. On top of that, there are people on the left who are pushing for ideas of defunding the police. And there are many people of all kinds of backgrounds who won't like that very much. There are people who live in bad neighborhoods. There are older women, older black women, who live in fear and terror of the young men who populate their areas, who sell drugs, who get what they want because they push their way around. And those women are very thankful for the police to look out for them, look after them, and keep those young, aggressive men under control. And they need to be, because there are many people who are defenseless and can't protect themselves against these thugs. And it's black, it's white, it's Asian. You know, we saw this in many different communities back 100 years ago on the Lower East Side. There are many areas of New York, people of all different backgrounds, whether they be Jewish, Irish, Italian, all sorts of groups, where there were many people who were very much afraid of the young thugs. And those young thugs have to be kept under control. They can't be allowed to run society, because that's not a society we can live in and be free if we're afraid to walk, if we're afraid to be where we are. So you have people who are now pushing very aggressively. My big fear is the loss of things like encryption. And so we see things like that. I worry about many of the Anglo countries, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and I'm worried that the United States will follow. We already have Five Eyes, and we know they exchange information between the different countries, and they get around the laws illegally, but they do get around the laws. And these are huge problems. So the only answer ultimately is found in the law, and making sure that good law is drafted, because people have to be held accountable.
So I don't know if I agree with that, though, because I feel like maybe software can take this out of the hands of the law or people or whatever. So I would like to push back, as the point is we've been forced to trust the law, trust people, trust the system, and now we have a way to enforce it with technology.
And if you can, that's great. I'm all in favor of that, but you still have to have laws which prevent these kinds of things from taking place. And I'm all in favor. I want to preserve encryption. I think that's critically important. I think we desperately need encryption, but we have people that want to take that away from free people from using encryption for their own privacy and for the things that we need. There are people in society who want to take away your rights, your freedoms, and they do it with the law.
It's not mutually exclusive. It's a two-front war.
Totally agree. I've said enough.
We also have to make sure, and it goes back to our talk about the tech. You know, if you don't have companies that have it in their culture to protect your privacy and encryption, then it's not very hard for the government to spy on you, because the tools that you have in your pocket will do it for them.
The communications companies have been in bed with the government from pretty much the very beginning. There are a lot of things which have been ties to the government for years, for decades already. Apple has been fairly good about some security and privacy issues, but at the end of the day, a company can only do so much, because if they have laws which prevent them from doing certain things, they're not going to break the law, because no CEO, no senior management is going to jail. So it's incumbent upon us to be active politically because those laws matter. And I know a lot of people say, well, I don't vote. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I don't care about lobbying. Well, you better care about those things. It matters for Bitcoin. I believe that the value of Bitcoin goes up. Bitcoiners will have to form political action committees. They will have to buy the politicians the way everybody else buys politicians to get things which are good for Bitcoin. And at the same time, we can get things which are good for privacy, for encryption, for laws concerning DNA. This is important stuff. You can't assume that the world doesn't exist because you want to ignore it.
I think part of the issue is that, I don't disagree that the law should be taken seriously and people should be bought in on crafting and making and voting, and I mean the process of creating law. Earlier we were talking about like the system has lost credibility, and I think the law has lost credibility as well. And so it's hard to take law as sacrosanct when it's not equally applied. It's not consistently applied. It's really kind of in a lot of ways just another lie we tell ourselves, that we choose when to apply it selectively when it serves our needs. And I also think that kind of in a we live in a strange world. We talk about law like, as if law matters and as if law is some moral apparatus in the United States, but then internationally, all of the moral principles that we espouse, we throw out the door. I mean, we have protests nationwide over someone dying from police brutality, but where are the protests over the wedding that got bombed by an American missile where 500 people died? Where are those protests? We don't even fucking care. 1 million people can die. We don't even care. So we're not even consistent in our application of moral justice before we even get into like legal justice. And I think the part about the police that I think is difficult is like we have a system that is very sick that needs to change, and as long as we don't address the core issue, the system will continue to get sick. And in many ways, the police are not just there to keep stability, but they are like the way that we spend the money that we print causes all sorts of problems that spread through society. And there are real repercussions for having a war on drugs and jailing 2% of our society, or having a broken education system. There's real consequences. And so it creates a part of the population that, it's hand to mouth and they'll do whatever they need to survive, and they're completely hopeless. And so when you have that situation, you need to have police, because those that still remain as part of the system, they're the only thing that divides the veil of their reality and like reality. And so, I'm worried that if you put this into like historical context, in Rome, there was 4 slave revolts that happened in Rome before Rome ultimately ended up collapsing. They happened over about a 150-year period. 3 of them were successfully put down, with basically everyone who revolted dying. One of them, Spartacus, came from, and it actually changed the cultural attitude that faced towards slaves. We are Roman citizens, all right? The slaves are uprising right now. The people that are pushed out of our society are uprising. And if there are no consuls in Rome to protect the privileged Roman citizens that are, whether we want to admit it or not, us, the people on this Zoom call who have laptops that we're calling into, then we're the people that are going to get fucking guillotined. So it's like, we need to address the core issue that's making society sick before we say, hey, we're going to remove all the safety rails that keep society from just murdering each other.
Well, wait. Hold on. There is one core issue. My name is Bitcoin Tina. Bitcoin, there is no alternative. And I call myself that for a reason, because Bitcoin is the single most powerful tool and weapon for what we're talking about. And Matt's laughing at me because I'm a one-trick pony. But the fact of the matter is that this is an incredibly powerful tool. And Money is the core of the problems, and many things spring forth from that. To use a historical reference regarding your comments before, we will hang together or we'll hang separately.
Which do you prefer, Tina?
Hang
He wants
together.
to hang together with you.
No, it's not just that. I understand there are issues and problems. Guess what? There have always been issues and problems. But the path of the United States, whether you would like to recognize it or not, and one of the failings that people have succumbed to, because education has been infiltrated by leftists and communists, is that you've been taught that the United States is a despicable, horrible nation. And factually, that's not true, because we have continually moved and strived to move in a positive direction. That really matters. You can laugh. But people look to reference it. This is horrible. Look how horrible these people were 200 years ago, 250 years ago. But they were radical revolutionaries at the time, pushing forward revolutionary ideas in a world which was not ready for them. And the things they did may not have been as good seen in the light of the 21st century, but they were phenomenal for their time in the 18th century. And we've keep moving forward and pushing. And you can't just look back on the past and condemn it, say everything was evil and everything was bad, and condemn things today because they're not perfect. Things are not perfect. You can only...
It's not about condemning the past.
You move towards an ideal asymptotically. You're never going to approach it. You're never going to reach it.
It's not about the ideas of the past being bad. It's that it's the institutions of the past when the ideas were good being corrupted. And like that's the problem. Like I'm
sorry to tell you this, but you know what? That's always been the state of the world. And if you don't think and see that that has always been the state of the world, then you don't know how to look at the world realistically, and you haven't looked at or read or studied anywhere near enough history. And you lack perspective. And perspective is very important. No, it matters. You lack perspective. There are things which are problems. There are things, but we have to not overstate problems and confuse issues. And you have people who very much want to take away your rights and your freedoms and the rights and freedoms of other people. And it's important not to overstate things, but to move in a positive direction. And we often want to talk in hyperbolic terms. There are many things that are not good about this country, but there are many things that are very good about this country. And we look to move forward in a sensible way, and we try to better ourselves constantly. But we don't do that by tossing away the rights and freedoms that are necessary. If we can't be a free people, that will take an enormous toll on everything in our lives. Most of us think economically. It will destroy the economy in time because there won't be innovation in a world where people are afraid to speak their mind. And in a world of censorship and silence, things will become stagnant and the problems will grow even larger. And we're moving towards a world where we self-center. Matt Odell said it earlier. I self-center myself. I self-censor myself. I self-censor. And that matters, and that's a problem. And he self-censors because he's afraid. So the more self-censorship you have, the less discussion you have, the less ability to develop new ideas. Ideas come about through Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Ideas need to fight each other. We have grown to the point now where the snowflakes don't like to hear ideas which make them feel bad. You need to hear the ideas that make you feel bad. Maybe you'll learn something from them. Too bad that they don't make you feel bad. Tough up. Get tougher. Can't handle ideas on a college campus? What the hell is wrong with you? That's what college campus is for. Shouldn't be afraid of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that assessment, but I mean, you know, you look at places where the inequality has been able to build, and there's one side that feels like the system works against them, and those places end in revolt, and they end in civilization collapsing, and that's the history of the world, is civilization collapsing.
There are so many opportunities in the United States of America. There are more opportunities here than there have been anywhere else in the world, and there are still more opportunities. You go around and talk to average people. I talk to average people.
Yeah,
I listen to them.
Bitcoin team,
The opportunities are tremendous. You have many people who want to sit back. They want to complain. They want to cry on their own cereal. And they want to say, oh, life is unfair. There's enormous opportunities for people who work hard.
Hey, let's let DB talk, and let's try not to talk over each other.
So you're conflating. All right, not one of my strengths, so I'm sorry, but you're conflating their ideology or ideas and institutions, and you can have plenty of fair criticisms of the Catholic Church during the 1300s, but still be fundamentally bought in on the ideas of the religion that they follow. So
which is why laws are so important. And that goes back to what I said about laws. That's exactly why laws are so important, because the laws restrain these institutions. And without laws to restrain them, you have nothing to restrain them.
But what happens when the laws don't restrain the institutions, but instead become a tool of the institutions to restrain the people? And that's what we're seeing right now. I mean, it's the Catholic Church controlled the laws. That was the problem. They controlled the information. They're the ones that set what was appropriate and what wasn't. And then they used that as a tool to control society. It wasn't until we had the ability to have information outside of their institutions that we were able to challenge them and change society as a whole.
If we give up being concerned about the laws that run these institutions, then sure, the institutions will have power. Look, we live in a society where people talk about things like term limits. The real problem is not term limits. The real problem is not even politicians. Do you know who government really is at the end of the day? Who's really government?
The money printer.
No. Government, no, it's not. That's part of it, but that's not the real government. That's not right. Government is bureaucracy. Government is enforcement. And who controls that? Bureaucracies. People go into government at 20, 21, 22, 25, and they leave government at 65. And those people are there regardless of administration. Democrat, Republican, doesn't really matter. They're still there. Government is all about enforcement. That is what government is. Government is only one thing. Government is a police force and enforcement. And if you give up your right and control of that enforcement and that police force, the government will run you. That can only be controlled through laws.
All right, I'm ready to change this conversation. Unless Jason wants to jump in.
Let me say one thing. The only argument I have against the whole it's about laws is the fact for over almost 200 years, a group of people was oppressed in this country with laws. So it's not just about laws, it's about laws being passed by just people.
And to take it one step further, in our age, the Iraq war was a legal war. The Afghanistan war was a legal war. We've committed more atrocities as a society legally than we have that are illegal. So, the law, when it is corrupted, is a tool for authoritative power. And
that's exactly right. But
by the people.
So, but you can't ignore it. You don't say you don't throw up your hands and ignore it, because then you enable those laws to exist. And the only way you'll ever have a chance of controlling and keeping. Ultimately, I'm a very big believer in small government. The less government, the better. Government likes to encroach on and encroach with power. Budgets always look to go up. The more budget I have, the more influence and power I have. That's what government is about. And if you can't control it and constrain it, government will become all powerful. So it is about constantly controlling and constraining. I'm a very big believer in the individual. I'm a very big believer in the rights of the individual and the ability of the individual to move forward and overcome.
But we should never forget people's ability to screw with other people through legal means.
Well, there are too many. There's no doubt. There's too many lawyers.
Hey, I need to pause this information, or we got to move to the next topic. Is social distancing over, John?
No, I think they'll still. I mean, the recent protests and stuff, I think, are going to be a hard one to explain away if there's not a massive uptick in the next few weeks. But I just don't feel like they're willing to give up on it yet. And in my perspective is obviously, I'm more influenced by what's going on up in Canada, but it's been really irrational for a while, and I think it'll probably persist for a while longer.
Is social distancing over, Bitcoin Tina?
No idea.
No idea. Matt Odell.
My favorite Bitcoin Tina meme is he asks a question and then he answers it. You should talk to average people. I talk to average people. He loves to do that. He does it every fucking time. And then he switches it to how he's bullish on Bitcoin. Every fucking time. I call that 12 minutes ahead of time in the Zoom chat. All we needed was masks. We needed masks. I don't think Corona was a fucking scam. I think it was a virus. We didn't know how bad it was. We didn't have masks. They weren't willing to tell us to wear masks because, people don't realize in New York City, it's been illegal to be with two people wearing masks since the 1800s. Less so if you're white, but still. Like, it's been illegal, and they wanted to do everything possible besides the one thing that would protect our privacy in addition to help with Corona. So I think we get people to wear masks. We go back to normalcy. Some people will die. It'll be a shame. You should talk to average people. I talk to average people.
Anyone have another take on social distancing?
The best part is that the government paid for the masks at 50 times the price they should have paid for them. Money printer go burr.
Right. Well, no, it's. I have a feeling it's going to be hard for them to reinstitute social distancing after all of this, because you don't get thousands of people. You got them once. It's really hard to get them again after they've all been out in the street together. For one, are you going to tell the National Guard to leave before you do? Are you going to bring more military force into the city? Those are the kind of questions you ask before people even consider this whole stay in your house until we tell you to come out stuff anymore.
If I can add one,
I'm bullish on social distancing. It's really been an incredible breakthrough in being able to not go to things that you don't want to go to, and to be able to bounce out of like one-to-one meetings. It really is just an incredible way to not do things you don't want to do with other people. So I'm bullish on it.
If I can add one thing, because this is the only place that we can talk about it in this conversation, but I don't know if you guys have followed the Lancet Gate, but talk about just an absolute unbelievable turn of events. That we had a political undercurrent that said that this drug was bad because the president who likes it. And this study was created that said that this drug actually ended up not being good and in fact detrimental to people's treatment course of the virus. And then it turns out, as of like this past week, that the data they used in that study was completely fake. And was not only completely fake, but faked in the way that people in this space fake ICOs. Like, literally, he had fake people on LinkedIn. One of his pages, I think, went to a cryptocurrency. In fact, like, literally, this was like a scam in our space played out on the national stage. And it was to show that this drug didn't work, and like, not only didn't work, but like was dangerous. And it's all fake. And it was published in the Lancet, like one of the best scientific journalists for medicine in the entire world. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's crazy.
It's bigger than that, right? We're talking about hydrochloroquine, and it's bigger than that because the incentives are broken, right? Like, the problem is that drug was readily available for cheap, and you couldn't patent it, right? And that's what happens. Like, if you have a solution that no one can profit off of, like, that solution is not gonna be trumpeted. And one thing where you brought up ICOs, that dude Joseph Tadaro, Like he was like on the front lines of that. Like he's a Bitcoin guy. Like there was we literally had someone in our sphere who honestly, like, to be honest, like I thought he was being fucking ridiculous in the beginning, and he was right. He turned out to be right.
Crazy.
Hey, I have to make an observation is that Bitcoin Twitter has been the most useful resource for me to get through these last few months by far. I would not have had masks. I would not have had extra meat in my freezer. I would not have been prepared for this. I would have been getting blindsided, angry about politics if it wasn't for being informed on Bitcoin Twitter.
You know, the only thing that frustrates me about the whole hydrochloroquine kind of fake news is that, you know, the one lesson I took away from it was that if Trump wanted to end the protest tomorrow, all he'd have to do is come out in support of the protesters. And it would all end the next day. I mean, if he just came out and he was like, I'm really behind this and I'm a big fan of this, the entire media establishment would turn against it in a second. You know, it would all flip in a second. So he could just end it tomorrow if he would just, you know, get down on one knee, kiss the ring.
So what's the undercurrent of the unrest? I just did a podcast with Ansel Lindner about this, and, you know, as Bitcoiners, we point to the money being fucked up. We point to the system being rigged. We point to all of these powers being able to have too much control to make these sweeping decisions. Is this really about Black Lives Matter? Is this really about something else? Like what is causing literally global protests? This is not America. Like this is global. Like there's people around the world that are protesting this.
Well, you have an issue with injustice. That needs to be addressed. And injustice actually goes beyond color, because everybody gets screwed over by somebody to a point. So it's not, what happens is what we're talking about in America is a history of just being screwed over by the government, by law enforcement, by banks, by things like that. And unfortunately, and I wrote an article about this, unfortunately, Black people tend to get the brunt of that mistreatment because it's easy, because we tend to come from lower income areas. We tend to come from lower education because of the way the school systems are set up. So it's easy to pick on us. And it goes back to my whole thing about the law. You can't rely 100% on the law because the law is written by people who don't like you. So you always have to take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to legal issues, and especially in this country. And a lot of people, I'm afraid, have been experiencing that.
But that's exactly the point, because if you're not paying attention to the law, then laws get passed which are problematic. Laws are passed which don't protect your rights. And what we have today, which is quite unfortunate, is we have omnibus bills. And in omnibus bills, things get stuffed into those bills so that there's no way to take the bad things out. One of the biggest problems with the way that we pass laws today is laws should each be passed individually on their own, have their own bill, be signed or not signed by the president. Because what happens is I stick the thing in that I want, you stick the thing that you want, I vote for yours, you vote for mine. 3 or 4, several hundred congressmen and senators put what they want to put in, and things get passed and laws get passed. And so we get to the point where nobody's watching anything because everybody just gets what they want and they don't care about anything else. Mm-hmm. So there is a fundamental flaw in the way these things are working, because in an omnibus bill, you're going to pass all sorts of horrendous things. And this happens all the time. And
Dina,
so
I love you.
That's
I love you. But your boomer perspective, you have a boomer perspective here, okay? Our politicians are bought and paid for. But they're legally bought and paid for. It's built into the system. That you can't solve anything that way. There's no solution there. It's not going to happen.
And as Bitcoiners, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, we need to buy politicians too. and get the things that we need for Bitcoin, because that will ultimately get you to where you need to be, because it will make a huge difference. And I know all you millennials think that it doesn't matter, but we have the best politicians money can buy.
I'm curious what John thinks as a Canadian. I'm curious what John thinks.
It's put into the First Amendment of the Constitution, the right to petition Congress. And that is an important thing. And we do have that right, and we should use it, and people will use it. And to ignore it and to say you want to stick your head in the sand, just because the ostrich wants to stick their head in the sand does not mean that the rest of their body is not sticking out. And trying to ignore what is part of an existing system is simply not a good answer. And
the American voter just tried to revolt and elected Donald fucking Trump president to burn the system down. And when Donald Trump showed up to light the building on fire, he met a bureaucracy of people that said, "Oh, fuck no, you're not in charge." The system cannot be changed. Like, we just had the most radical election of my lifetime.
Bitcoin Tina. I keep going back to that, and I go back to that for a reason. It's the most powerful weapon we have. There is no alternative. Why do you think I use that name? Why do you think I keep repeating it? Because it is the most important thing. I'm a one-trick pony. All I care about is Bitcoin. Why? Because it matters when you change the money, and it is absolutely critical. And anytime you get away from that, you are misdirecting yourself. Focus should be on one thing and one thing only, Bitcoin. And there's reason for it, because it's incredibly powerful. So anytime you're moving away from that, you're getting distracted. You are like a laser beam, letting your beam get diffused. Well, you're not going to cut when your beam is diffused. It needs to be concentrated.
Isn't that what we're saying? Aren't we saying that Bitcoin is the only alternative? We hang separately. Isn't that what we're saying? That all, like, you know, the political look, yeah. When Bitcoiners are capitalized, maybe they'll be able to expedite certain processes, or, you know, get certain things faster because they can buy off some politicians. But I think we're all on the same page that nobody's hoping for political solutions to these problems here.
That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you will have certain natural consequences that come in a Bitcoin-only world, and we have to get there. The size and market cap of this has to go up a lot, and it will go up a lot. It will be in the hundreds of trillions of dollars, and it will completely change the way governments work, society works, the economy works. We'll be working in a new economic paradigm, in my opinion. It's not just that Bitcoiners will be able to help laws get passed which help Bitcoin.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But the point is that everything takes time. Nothing happens right away, but an enormous amount of change can happen in 15 to 30 years. And in my opinion, Bitcoin will be the one and only money in 14 to 29 years. And the entire world will be using it. And its value will be incomprehensible, in the hundreds of trillions of dollars in market cap. Bitcoin, in today's buying power of $20 to $50 million or higher. And I think this is going to happen incredibly fast. I'm looking for Bitcoin prices to be $3 to $5 million by 2030, 2032-ish, maybe higher, because this thing is incredibly scarce, and as people come to understand it, they desperately want to own it, and they will desperately buy it. And this will have a big impact. So it's good to talk about all these other things, but we, in some senses, have to be laser-like focused on Bitcoin and only Bitcoin, because a distraction from that, it's like the impact of the internet. The internet has had staggeringly huge impact on the economy. And you guys don't see it because you're so young. I see it more because I'm much older, and I knew a world without an internet. It matters.
Boomer.
I'm actually probably an old Gen Xer or the tail end of the boomers. But in all seriousness, I don't think people really fully comprehend what this is going to do, how much it's going to change the way our economy works. It's so powerful. It will completely reshape. You know, you got guys like Jeff Booth talking about deflation. Technology is by its very nature deflationary. The fact that we have any inflation indicates how screwed up the system is.
Every time we get you flustered, you just pivot to Moon. You just every time
because it matters.
I think
because
that's
adoption is led by price.
This is what we were saying. This is what I thought we were saying. Like I agree with the focus on Bitcoin. I thought you were representing, another tract where, getting laws changed and stuff was like had some import. I was equivocating, saying maybe when Bitcoiners are capitalized because price goes up, maybe they can do that too. But I'm laser focused, and I think most people on this call know the degree of change and impact that Bitcoin's market cap going up is going to, how many different things is going to fundamentally change. And that's why we all think there's no changing the system as is. Even if you can buy up all the petition stuff, it is this fundamental lever. This is what has all the impact. And that's why this is so important. And that's why our focus is on this.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is you can't say that you're going to ignore it because it will matter. And even with just 1 or 2 Bitcoins, you're going to have a tremendous amount of wealth. And with that wealth, you're going to have a voice, and it will matter. If you have 10 Bitcoin, you will be staggeringly rich in 10, 15, 20 years. And in today's buying power...
When the government doesn't have the printing press anymore, there won't be any reason to lobby them because they won't be able to do shit.
Well, but you have to get there. So you're not going to be worried about lobbying them. You might be worried about lobbying them in 5 years. Although as Bitcoin gets bigger, in my opinion, once it's big enough and it has a large enough internal market, then a lot of things become nearly impossible for the government to enforce. So when Bitcoin is, and I don't know what the market cap would be, $50 trillion, $20 trillion, have a large enough internal market, you may never have to sell your Bitcoin for USD. You'll only buy things with Bitcoin. Technology will be evolved to the point where it'll be nearly impossible to enforce taxation. And so you'll have a government which probably tries to move to consumption tax because they won't be able to enforce income tax. Because there'd be too many people using Bitcoin, transacting in Bitcoin. It would be like transacting in a cash market. The government has specifically moved away from cash markets. There used to be something called bearer bonds. How many people here know about bearer bonds? They were eliminated in the early 80s. They all had to be registered. Now, what's the problem with bearer bonds for a government? For government, it means that large amounts of cash can move around. It's better than cash. You could move literally back then hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in these easy to move bearer instruments. Bitcoin is more powerful than that. And there will be a point at which it will be nearly impossible for the government to enforce this. And as technology gets developed with all the different things that obfuscate ownership, and more things are being developed, enforcement becomes nearly impossible when tens and hundreds of millions of people are using it. So these things will evolve. There may be some periods where we'll have to go through some rough patches, but I think that we'll be at the point where enforcement becomes difficult in 7 to 10 years. This is going to happen incredibly fast. The question is, are you ready for how fast it's going to be? Because it's going to be in 10 years from now, if I'm still here, you'll be shocked at what the world looks like vis-a-vis Bitcoin and the impact that it's already beginning to have.
Tina,
and
what
the
do
fact
you think?
that the world will cater to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like Godzilla that will be 3 miles high. And when Bitcoin walks, governments will quake.
Tina, when you say, are you ready? What do you think people should be ready for? What are you referring to when you say that?
How fast all of this is going to happen? It's going to happen. Huge.
I know, but what are the actual what does that mean?
It's hard to know what it means because we can only begin to guess. But
so you prepare mentally? Is that what you mean? That it's going to happen?
Well, you have to have a mind. One of my biggest fears, I think many millennials will lose their Bitcoin to boomers. Many millennials will sell out of too much of their Bitcoin at prices which are too low. Many will sell out at $100,000, $200,000. They won't be there when it's $1 million. People who have more money than them, more staying power than them will come in, they'll buy, and they won't relinquish it. It'll be like the people who bought up the best land in New York back in the 1800s and held on to it for generations. And when you buy things and hold on to them and you don't have to sell them and you have the capability of holding on, people who sell won't be able to buy back what they have. If you have 10 Bitcoin today, you sell too low, you'll be lucky if you have 1 or 2 Bitcoin. I think most people will end up having 10% of what they have today in 15 to 20 years because they will have sold way too low because they undervalue this asset.
I actually agree. I actually agree with that take because it's really, if you are planning to sell, it is so hard to do it properly. I want to hear what Matt Odell has to say just because he's writing notes and I would rather hear him speak.
Zoom should have the feature where I can just put text on my face box so I don't have to fucking write it out on a fucking pad and paper.
Hey, they're listening.
Like
so
a
they might
Bitcoin
add
Tina
it.
before the internet existed. I think that the younger generation disproportionately has Bitcoin. Like I don't know where we went on that conversation. I'm bullish too, Tina. I'm bullish too, but I don't. The boomers already are winning. The status quo is the boomers having the wealth, and I think that the younger generation disproportionately has Bitcoin. I talked to my dad. My dad can't even he doesn't even know what his Apple password is. I manage that for him. You know, do you think he's gonna custody his Bitcoin? Like what? In what world does even if you talk about someone like Paul Tudor Jones owns no Bitcoin. He owns IOUs. Okay, Bitcoin Tina is going to be like the most Bitcoin rich boomer that exists. I don't know.
No. Wait. But number one, I'm not so sure you're right about Paul Tudor Jones because
it's all CME.
No, you don't actually know that. You got to remember, Paul Tudor Jones is actually pretty smart. He's actually a really, really smart trader. And he's not going to want to pay roll. He has to roll his futures. My guess is that for personally, look, he's done things personally and with his fund. And what he does for his fund is not necessarily what he does personally. Personally, he can easily buy Bitcoin, have someone help him custody it if he doesn't know how. He may have to trust somebody who works for him. He may have to trust
self-custody. Tina, he's not self-custodying, right?
You know what? But if he, let me ask you a question. When you're worth it, when you're worth $1 billion because of your Bitcoin, do you think you're going to do everything for yourself? This guy's worth He's worth $5 billion. He's a very, very, very rich man.
Okay,
he's
so
used
you're
to having.
agreeing with
He's
me.
used. Do I agree with you about what?
You're agreeing with me. He's not self-custodying.
No, I don't think he is.
But
that doesn't mean that he doesn't own physical Bitcoin.
Dude, if I worked for Paul Tudor Jones, I'd be making a Xerox copy of that private key. That old man doesn't know what's going on.
Nah,
5 years later, just.
Don't worry, Paul.
Yeah, that's
Paul.
okay because
it's secure.
You can't assume that people are stupid. You just can't assume people are stupid. He's got plenty of incredibly smart people around him. And I promise you, he's well informed on the issues because he's an incredibly smart man. He's an incredibly successful trader.
All I'm saying is, Tina, is I'm not worried about the millennials here.
No, but I'm making
I think the millennials will do fine in hybrid.
But I'm making a specific point, and what I'm saying is there are a lot of people out there. Look, we should already be higher than we are. Why aren't we higher than we are? There's somebody who keeps selling this thing.
It's legal in like half the states.
What's that?
Oh, what were you talking about?
He's talking about Bitcoin.
Seriously. So we should already be much higher than we are. I know some of you are already high, but that's not the point.
Neither confirm nor deny.
Bitcoin's price should be much higher than it already is, and it will get there. And the benefit of these low prices is it has gone into more hodlers' hands. You know what I feel about trading. I do not think trading adds liquidity to the system, not at all. I think hodlers actually add liquidity because when you trade in, when you buy and then sell, you've added nothing. Net, you've contributed nothing to the liquidity of the system. It's a very temporary add of liquidity.
So I have a question.
You know,
where do we
what
want
do you
to take
think
this?
is the average? What do you think is the average age of people who listen to this live stream, or people who listen to Tales from the Crypt, or people who listen to POV Crypto with CK,
we already have the
or
data.
John Vallis's.
We already
25?
have
25, 30?
8.
80? What did you say?
8 years
25 or 30? What's the average
8 years
age?
old?
Yeah, 8 years old.
Wait, I have 8-year-olds who listen to my podcast. I've been cursing all the time. I hope not.
It's about 25 to 34.
Exactly. Millennials.
No, I understand that. That's not my point. My point is that I don't think many people really understand how valuable this asset is. And I think it's worth an incredible amount. I think it's like buying the best parts of New York in the 1800s, except the difference is it's not going to take 200 years for it to get incredible value. It's going to happen in 10 years, 15 years. If you're 25, 10 years seems like forever, but you're going to be 35 from 25 very fast. And all I'm saying is, if you undervalue this asset, there are people who are constantly trading this thing. Most people who trade this will end up losing their Bitcoin because they will have either been leveraged long or leveraged short, and it will get away from them. And you will see this played over and over and over again. We have 10 years of experience with that.
So I don't want to derail this, but I do want to kind of bring it back to the original conversation, which is more around like the social unrest, Bitcoin as a peaceful protest. So I do agree that Bitcoin will probably moon. It's going to be important. Most likely Bitcoiners will utilize their new influence to influence politics. But I'm kind of curious to bring it back down to the original conversation.
Can I weigh in on this?
What is a speakeasy? When someone goes, "Oh, I'm going to the speakeasy," what the fuck does that mean?
DB. Tina,
so
you
real quick too. I just want to add in for people who are kind of joining the stream now versus at the beginning. We're talking about undercurrents. One thing we kind of talked about at the beginning of the stream was that, you know, there is absolutely a racial issue at hand that is leading these protests and leading this movement, but that there are other things that are easier to fix in the short term than you know, these millennia old issues that stem from economic issues. And so when we're talking about kind of this from the economics standpoint, that's why we're taking this route and not talking more about kind of the racial side of this, because this is something that Bitcoin ultimately can have a hand in solving. So I wanted to just throw that out there for people joining late. How is the Bitcoin conversation? That's kind of how we got to this point. I also wanted to go ahead and real quick throw out a question that we don't have to answer right now, but we had a question in the Periscope from Create Software asking if only rich people are in control of the system, how is that any better from now than now when talking about kind of how Bitcoin changes the system?
All right, so can I tackle that question and maybe the question CK posed before that? First off, sure. Why it's better is because we are now putting the decision-making power in the hands of people who have an ideological view that's consistent amongst the people who buy Bitcoin. They're individual first people. They're sound money people. They're, you know, Bitcoin is an ideological revolution as much as it is a technological one. You know, I think to the question that CK asked earlier, I personally think that this situation that we're in right now has very little to do with racial issues. I think that this is a serf revolt. We live in a form of modern day serfdom, and there's an uprising, rightfully so, honestly. And I think that people are misdirected and confused in terms of what the actual problem is, but I think that it couldn't be clearer. We have a monetary system that dominates the world, that rewards debtors and hurts people who are savers. All right, who are debtors? It's not people who use credit cards. They're not debtors. Who are debtors are governments. Who are debtors are corporations. Who are debtors are people who borrow huge sums of money and use it to buy assets that appreciate with an inflationary monetary policy. And who are the beneficiaries of that? The beneficiaries of government having money. Those are the corporations and the contractors who get the bids. It's the Boeings of the world, the Lockheed Martins of the world. It's the military industrial complex. Who are the people who benefit from corporate America being able to get cheap debt? It's the shareholders. Who are the shareholders? Take a racial go and measure the ethnicities of people who are shareholders in America. I bet you'll probably reveal that white people dominate it. White people dominate it. So go look at the system and who's the winners and who are the losers. The losers are people who got pension funds. The losers are people who have jobs and rely on cash flow from their job to maintain their standard of living. Those are the losers. The everyday man is the loser. And so we have a system that's designed so that the only place that the everyday man can get cheap money is if they want to go to college and waste 4 years of their life on a degree that doesn't matter. But outside of that, the everyday man can't get fucking a penny lent to them unless it's at exorbitant interest rates. So we have a system that only the people who have access to cheap debt win. The only people who have access to cheap debt are the people who are at the top of our institutions. Those people come from a privileged set of universities that have a common ideology, and we have created a plutocracy within our economy. And so people are rising up. They're rising up against the wrong thing. This will probably be put down, like most revolts are put down. I actually did a little bit of research on how many peasant revolts have existed over the last 2,000 years and the outcomes of them. And I thought most peasant resulted in the peasants winning. Wrong. Actually, the vast majority of peasant results end up with the peasants being killed at a massive scale. I was surprised by that, but that's the reality. About 80% of the time, 85% of the time. That's what's going on. And I feel like people, it's probably going to take us another 10 years to realize it. And in the process, Bitcoin is going to fucking moon as the system breaks apart around us.
Well, we also have to, and that was a great point, David, but we also have to remember that a lot of the things that drives racism is economic. Because what happens is the people on the top don't want the people on the bottom to move out of their space. So they pit them against each other. And so what you have in this protest and what we're seeing now is a mixture of income inequality and racism. And the two hit at the same time during a pandemic. And all hell broke loose. So that's why you can't placate this one with the whole, we'll give you stuff and just go home and play nice. Because there's nothing to give us. You already killed it because you wanted us to social distance and not go to work. So now all we have left is rage. And this is what you're seeing on TV every day.
But wait, hold. You used a phrase which I really can't stand. We don't have income inequality in this country. That's completely wrong. You have wealth.
Kidding me?
I'm quite serious. We have wealth inequality, which is driven by our money system. The real inequality comes from the easy money, which benefits capital assets. And that is, so you have people who wind up making a lot of money in unrealized gains, who become extraordinarily wealthy, who never have to pay tax on that or rarely have to pay tax on it. It's an important distinction. We call it income inequality.
Semantics.
It's not semantics. It's not semantics.
Even off the fact that you have people who actively make it their business to keep other people in poverty.
It's not semantics, and it matters. And let me explain to you why it matters. So if you come from nothing and you manage to get yourself a big job and make a lot of money, or you start a business and you make a lot of money, if I hit you with a very high income tax rate, how are you ever going to accumulate wealth? Can you explain that to me? So what we have is, we have a system which is designed to benefit capital accumulation with an easy money policy that enables capital assets to grow. You don't pay tax on unrealized gains, which I think is right and fair and smart, because you as a Bitcoiner will actually prefer not to pay taxes on your unrealized gains. But it's an important distinction, and we use that term income inequality all the time. And those people who you think are your biggest trouble spot, they love it when you use the term income inequality, because you're not focused on the right spot. You're focused on the magic act of distraction.
Dude, it absolutely is income inequality. We have
no, it's not. It's wealth inequality. No,
who owns the NASDAQ? It's not the people looting in the stores.
I'm sorry. Is that wait? Is that income or is that wealth? Are stocks income or are stocks wealth? It's not the same thing.
What's the difference?
It's not the same thing at all. If you don't understand this, what the hell are you doing in Bitcoin? Because you don't understand anything. If you don't, wait, no. If you don't, I'm serious. If you don't understand Cantillon effect, income comes from labor and wages. Capital accumulation comes from capital asset prices going up. Capital asset prices going up is benefited tremendously from easy money. That's Cantillon effect. That's what Cantillon effect is. So if you're going to talk about income inequality, then you've already bought into the distraction. You've already followed the magician on the distraction, and you've missed the entire point.
Quintina, so you're saying that you don't believe in income inequality, but you believe in wealth inequality? Is that the differentiating factor you're making?
It's a very big factor, because when you
Well,
wait, when you buy into
that's what I mean. It's wealth inequality. I can
semantics.
You can buy your house.
No, it's not semantics, because it matters. Because here's the thing: if you take somebody who comes from nothing and they do well for themselves, and you hit them with a high tax rate, because that's what we like to do. The left typically says, "Oh yeah, let's have really high taxes, because that's a really good thing." How does the left look to have power? They look to have very high tax rates, and then they give special people special tax breaks and credits to control them. That's how it works. Now, if you're going to buy into the term income inequality and use the term they want you to use, now you've bought into the magic act of distraction, and you're missing the point. You're missing the true storyline, and you've now gone exactly how they want you to go. Do you think Warren Buffett loves to talk about income inequality? Because he's not making his money from income. He makes virtually no income. He makes money from capital appreciation.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't understand what you're differentiating here. People can realize their gains in their wealth, and then they can go buy shit with it. I mean, the
hold on. Let's wait. Okay, hold on. You've completely missed the point here. So, if I have $1 million in stocks, and it increases in value in 10 years to $10 million in stocks, and I sell a couple of $1 million of that, and I'm going to pay a capital gains tax, and I'm at a much lower rate, and I think it should be at a lower rate because capital should have that benefit, but I'm going to pay a capital gains rate, and I basically will go untaxed until I sell that, and my effective tax rate is much lower. Now, if I earn the same money along the way with income, I'm going to pay much higher rates, and I'll never be able to accumulate sufficient capital to benefit from that capital accumulation in the capital asset markets, which include real estate and stocks. Does anybody here other than Matt Odell understand the tax benefits of real estate in the United States of America and how significant and how specially treated that is? Why don't you explain that, Matt? Because I know you understand it.
You're just arguing semantics.
It's not semantics. You're buying when you use terms that they like you to use, you have now bought into the nature of the argument of distraction.
The you just laid out is one in which is kind of a real scenario. People have investments or assets that they own that have appreciated by 10 times in value or 5 times in value over a period of years, and they have to pay some taxes on it. Versus someone who makes an income that grows their income, if they're lucky, grows at 2 or 3% per year. Inflation grows at a faster pace. Their cost of living grows faster than their wages grow, and they get poorer and poorer and poorer every single year. And so where are they supposed to go accumulate the amount of capital in order to go buy assets?
Now analyze what you just said. So is it income inequality or is it wealth inequality?
I think they're two sides of the same coin. You're talking about
No, they're not. No, they're not. You've bought into the distraction. You've bought into the distraction.
I think I see exactly where Bitcoin Tina is coming from. So let me try and help smooth this over a little bit. What he's saying is that the income, because it can, ultimately your cost of living will equal out to your income. Like income inequality isn't the issue, and we need to be focused on pointing out what the real problem that we need to address is, and it's not income inequality that is the problem. You can't solve a problem unless you address the correct problem. He's saying the real issue, the real inequality that's happening is that we have people who are really wealthy sitting at the top, sitting on assets, sitting on stocks, sitting on real estate. And then we have poor people who may have a decent income, but have no wealth that they've accumulated.
People should not be forced to be professional investors in order to be able to accumulate wealth. We should have a society where I agree with you, Bitcoin.
I think that's his point.
We have a deflationary society where if you earn an income and your income is sticky, that your standard of living grows every year.
I agree, and I agree, and that's why I believe in Bitcoin. I agree with that completely. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to use the language of the people who are looking to create distraction, you can never, before you get to the world where it's a Bitcoin only world and you have a deflationary money, before you get there, if you have the bulk, if you come up from nothing and you have a difficult time accumulating wealth because of high earned income tax rates, you'll never be able to accumulate wealth. The point is that, and it goes back to why we're talking about Bitcoin. The greater disparity is easy money policies, which, why are you smiling? Easy money policies, which create this great wealth disparity. So you have people like Michael Bloomberg that's worth $50 billion. Warren Buffett, who's worth $100 billion, but they become, Jeff Bezos is worth $150 billion. And they're worth that because of capital accumulation and benefit dramatically from very easy money. So Blackstone is able to buy cheap real estate because they get access to money post 2008 and 9 and pick up assets in 2009, 2010, 2011, very cheap prices because they have access to that money. But that's about wealth. That's about capital assets and the benefit that accrues to capital assets with easy money policies. And so what I'm saying is, don't just buy into the language of the people who are thrilled that you're buying into that language. You're in Bitcoin for a reason, and you need to understand, and you probably do, but you need to use the right language to express it. And it's not semantics. Words have meaning. Words have power. Words influence people's thinking. And if you're not going to use the right words, don't bother. It's important to help people think about things the right way, and using the right words matters because you can't explain it. And if you're going to buy into the wrong words, the distraction words, you'll never be able to get your point across.
Tina, time is money. You just wasted a lot of my money. Okay?
Yo, Ansel just jumped in. I think he has some opinions. He was in the comments on YouTube. What's up, Ansel?
What's up, guys? Yeah, I just want to say if you want to go down wealth, why not just say what it really is? It's about power. It's a power inequality. It's not wealth inequality or anything. Some of these politicians are rich, but some of these politicians aren't rich. So they have the ability to point the gun at your head and take your money. It's power.
But the point is that we all agreed with Jason. Okay, we just spent the last 15 minutes or whatever, however long. We all agreed with what he said. Wealth, power, I don't give a shit. Income, doesn't matter. We all agreed with what he said.
But so I think to elucidate Tina's point just one step further, if you say the problem is income inequality, then the solution is graduated income tax and high minimum wage. Right?
No,
that's how you solve income inequality.
That's not at all.
The problem with that,
I think that's his point.
Well, the problem with when you raise the minimum wage, and this is where it gets lost in the, like Tina said, in the language, because if you raise the minimum wage and don't deal with the cost of living too, you're not changing anything, right? People are going to like in San Francisco. The reason why San Francisco is so expensive, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they know how much people in San Francisco make. So they know you make this kind of money, so they raise the money to. They're not going to charge someone down in I'm in LA, so let me use an LA term. They're not going to charge someone in Watts the same money that they would charge someone in Beverly Hills because they know they wouldn't be able to pay it. But if a
Totally.
tech firm rolled into Watts and people started, millionaires started living in that area, you better believe the cost of living would go up.
But so I think what I'm trying to say though is that Tina's trying to say what I'm trying to say is Tina's trying to say, is, by saying that the issue is income, then sorry if I'm lagging right now. If you say the issue is income, then that means that you're going to target how to reduce income inequality. And the way that the system or in the politics have targeted income inequality is minimum wage and graduated income tax. And that's the
however you decide to approach this argument is subjective, right? The reason why people are saying it's semantic is because in most cases it's going to be a distinction without a difference, because in both cases, however you decide to go through it, the answer ends up the government's ability to print money for nothing is what causes these problems. It doesn't matter if you decide to go down one road or the other. Yes, the argument will be slightly different depending on which road you go, but it ends up in the government's power to create money.
And you want to talk about a disincentive to work? It's work your whole fucking ass off your whole life to make $1 when the dude next to you gets $1 fucking printed and handed to him, and your life work is worthless. All right, that fucking pisses people off.
To be clear, I'm not advocating for those things. I'm saying that if you think that's the problem, that's how you would solve it, and that's why he's saying that's not the problem. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Is it possible to agree with everyone here?
I
it's
agree
power
with
inequality,
I
income
think
inequality,
it's
wealth inequality, the
CK.
Cantillon effect. It's all that shit. We got to take the money away from the man.
That isn't easily solved. That's why it's good we're talking about it.
Y'all, we are almost at 3 hours. We could keep this argument going. We can go to last word. I don't give a shit. It's up to y'all. You tell me.
Last word, man. I gotta go home.
Last word.
Home. My wife came in. You wrap this up.
All right. Well, I bullied Ansel to get in here. So, I mean, do you have any words for the group here? Not to put you on the spot here, but I know that I appreciate your opinion.
No, good stream, guys. Thanks. That's it.
All right. Next, Valis.
Few words. Made a few words.
Nothing special. It's a pleasure to have sat here and been a part of this discussion with you all. I'm looking forward to the next topic of conversation. I think citadels are going to rapidly become a more interesting topic. So I think we should probably start more seriously discussing that one.
All right. Jason.
Well, just want to thank you for having me on. It was very educational, very entertaining. For me, I still think the most important thing about getting people involved in Bitcoin is the educational side. And it once you start with the education side, all this other stuff we're talking about can become a part of the conversation. But you got to give people something to work with from the ground. And then you can start talking about Keynesian. Then you can start talking about wealth versus income. Because a lot of people tuned out on us when we were going through that. Because we have to start with educating them at where they are. And then we can start building them up to a more in-depth conversation.
All right. Tina.
Money is a very, very hard topic. We think we know about money because we carry money all the time. We buy things and we spend things and we think we know about money. Most people don't know anything about money. And it's very hard to teach people about money. We live in a society which enables very easy access to credit. Credit is the worst drug there is. It's very easy to start. It's very hard to get out of. We start off young people today. They go to college. They do get garbage degrees. They spend a lot of money on that. They're then permanently in debt, and it prevents them from advancing and moving forward in their lives, from buying cars, from buying houses, from starting businesses. The problem of easy credit is pernicious. Every inflation that we see comes from easy credit. We see it in education. We see it and saw it in housing. It's very destructive. It's a it's a very difficult topic, and trying to make it easy for people to understand is not easy because it's complicated. The reason number go up is so powerful is because everybody loves to make money. And that is the single biggest driver and the single biggest reason which builds it builds network effects, and it will build adoption because it will build people buying into Bitcoin. And that's why this thing is so powerful. You don't have to explain number go up to people. They understand. And that's a huge advantage. And that's why Bitcoin works and will work. And fortunately, we don't have to explain much. As people start to understand number go up, we've been in a period here of a couple of years and number hasn't gone up very much since 2017. And that's the perception. Over 20,000. The psychology changes everywhere. This will be the biggest bull market we've ever seen in Bitcoin. And it's going to be spectacular. And the number is going to go up more than people can imagine. And people will be desperate to find out about Bitcoin.
I agree. The lines for guns are going to be even bigger for Bitcoin. Matt Odell.
Tina, you speak too slowly. Time is money. Okay? You don't win a rigged game by playing that fucking game. You play a different game. Stay humble, stack sats. I don't fucking care about your semantics. Let's fucking go.
All right, DB, last word for real.
We're in a weird place. We're in a weird place. It all starts with personal responsibility. It all starts with taking care of your own house, taking care of your own life. And, we are on a slow motion train wreck. And this story has played out again and again and again and again in history. And it's going to play out one more time. And so, all you can do about it is start with yourself, and don't be scared of change. Change is good. Change, the world will never be brighter after we drop the shackles of fiat money. So, charge into the night. Take care of yourself.
All right. Well, that was a great way to end it. This was a fantastic episode. So thank you, everyone, for joining for this conversation. Cheers to you all. Hope you're safe and sane out there, and have a good night.
All right.
See ya.